The Elemental Wizard of Hogwarts Chapter 101-120. Chapter 101-Catgirl Hermione. Although Hermione refused to open the door for a long time, Seal still knew what was going on. As a heavy cat controlling Seal, he still had great expectations for Hermione to become a cat girl. Fun, it's treatable anyway. Of course, Hermione wasn't that easy to fool. Seal was flickering outside the door for a long time before Hermione hesitantly opened the door of the toilet cubicle. What caught Seal's eyes was Hermione in the shape of a beautiful short and white cheese cat. Her furry claws shyly covered her face as a kitten. It didn't look big, but it was a little bit. Meaning of kitten. Hermione saw Seal standing in front of her through the gaps in her claws, and explained weakly, "I made a mistake, it's not the girl's hair, it's just the cat hair stuck to her body. It's all black. I made a mistake." Although Hermione tried her best to explain her current situation so as to ease Seal's shock, Hermione had no idea why Seal was stunned. Of course, it couldn't be a shock. Seal just felt that something moved in his DNA. Looking at Hermione's furry claws and the cute little head shaped like a cheese cat, Seal suddenly felt, "My body is out of control." I saw that under the condition of Seal unconscious. He raised his hands slowly, his left hand grabbed one of Hermione's claws covering his face, and his right hand automatically put it on Hermione's furry head, and then unconsciously. "Start Rua a bit." Meow. Hermione looked at Seal, who seemed to have a little star beside him, with a black question mark on her face, and watched Seal Rua her head with a doting face, and her left hand was still touching her claw. Meatball. Hermione felt a little comfortable for a while. So there was a subconscious grunt in her throat. As soon as Hermione's grunt came out, let alone Seal, even Hermione was standing there, and the two looked at each other awkwardly. Hermione pondered briefly, combined with the fact that in last semester, Seal seemed to know everything, and then Hermione's eyes began to become more and more dangerous. Although Hermione was wearing this little girl's face, she couldn't be fierce at all. At most, she looked fierce, but the word, dangerous, appeared on Seal's head unconsciously. "Ha ha, ha, Hermione, can you listen to my sophistry?" Seal stammered and tried to win. "Give you a chance, meow. If you can't explain it clearly, you will be miserable. Meow," Hermione said over and over again, knocking off Seal's own sinful hand in Rua, and then slapped her claws one by one in front of Seal. "Pop out and look at Seal." Dangerous, on his head didn't disappear at once, but began to flicker all the time. I think about it, where is the best place to start quibbling?" Charles scratched his face in embarrassment, then prepared to make a final struggle. But before Seal could finish speaking, Hermione jumped up immediately. Hermione, who had transformed into Meow Neong, seemed to have inherited Meow's agility at this time, and suddenly fell to the ground, followed by a meow. Fist. Fortunately, because of a certain ghost, no one came here, otherwise, Seal's screams could be heard in the corridor, and there was a female voice mixed with a meow fetish constantly asking if Seal knew something long ago. Of course, in the end, Seal took off his robe to cover Hermione and helped send him to the school hospital. Madame Pomfrey at the school hospital was not polite at all, and kept scolding the young people of the Shire for such fancy things. Fortunately, there was no one in the school medical room. There was only one Colin in isolation. Of course, Colin in the isolation room didn't know what was going on outside. Otherwise, Seal and Hermione would have stayed at Hogwarts shamelessly. However, although Seal made a big red face, he still stood up and tried to refute Madame Pomfrey. After all, he explained the situation clearly. Of course, Seal is not without gains. Have you ever seen Mau Mau Shy? Seal saw it, it's still the plus version. That kind of talk. In the end, Hermione stayed in another cubicle for treatment by herself. According to Madame Pomfrey, Hermione would never come out before Christmas. Seal had no choice but to go back to the bathroom to wait for the two men to return. One thing to say, even if Seal sat in the bathroom and waited for Harry and Ron, he was still a pig brother. Rua Hermione Cat. His hand was so comfortable that Seal couldn't extricate himself for a while. Of course, if you add the imprint of the cat's claws on Seal's face, it will not be a pig brother. He looks like a pervert. Fortunately, there is no one in the bathroom at this time. Otherwise, Seal will never think of having the opposite sex in his life. Friendship. I don't know how long Seal waited. Harry and Ron dragged their fat clothes and trotted back all the way. As soon as they opened the door, they saw all kinds of cat paw marks on Seal's face sitting on the ground and smirking. Suddenly they all suspected that Seal was attacked by the monster in the secret room. The nervous Harry and Ron immediately shook Seal vigorously, interrupting Seal's memory of recalling his cat, and looking at the two panicked people. What's wrong? What happened? Charles looked at the two boys suspiciously. They both breathed a sigh of relief when they saw that Seal was all right, and at the same time they were a little confused about what happened to Seal. You tell me what happened to you first. *2 inches the two questioned in unison. Seal looked at the two extremely determined people, but could only say that something happened to Hermione's potion, and it wasn't a big problem, and he was sent to the school hospital by himself. Seeing the two of them turn from seriousness to curiosity, before the two of them could ask what was wrong, Seal asked first, how about you two? What did the investigation find out? The two who were still a little curious at first heard Seal's question and immediately became depressed. Harry shook his head helplessly and said, nothing was found out. Ron also said very lowly, Malfoy doesn't know anything, he is not an heir at all, and even the whole Slytherin doesn't know who is the heir. Seeing the two of them, Seal quickly comforted him, and at the same time he was relieved. If Hermione knew that it was her big mouth who told the other two big mouths that the whole school knew that she had become a cat girl, then Seal would definitely be in the hospital the day Hermione was discharged. With a sigh of relief in his heart, Charles frantically instilled the chicken soup from his previous life decades ahead of the two ignorant little boys in the United Kingdom, and once again pulled the two of them to go to the kitchen to get something to eat to reward them. Gotta get Hermione some food, don't you? Chapter 102-Shire who wanted to go to Azkaban and surrendered himself. The news of Hermione's hospitalization was known to the whole school the next day, and they were all saying that Hermione was the second classmate who was attacked. Although it was not the real reason for hospitalization, it was impossible for the 4 people who were violating the school rules. Explain. As a result, people are even more panicked. Some people even began to sell some unpopular amulets and other gadgets. The sales were unexpectedly very good. There are even rumors that the twins made a lot of money by relying on some special effects amulets. Chieme smiled and didn't say anything about this, otherwise you would think that those amulets that seemed to be full of special effects, but were actually absolutely useless, came from whose hands? These things are the commercial secrets of Shire and Gemini, not to mention Harry and Ron, even Hermione doesn't know. Of course, everything is not so perfect. Arluo, the king of trouble, the death of heart, saw the low pressure in the school, and was ready to do a big thing. Thanks to the fact that Valentine's Day and Christmas are very close this year, Lockhart decided to invest his own money to give the school a grand carnival, so that the little wizards can at least have a good time during the festival, and the 2 festivals will be celebrated together. Seal, who heard this rumor, didn't want to stay at school at all, but he knew what kind of shit Lockhart would do. So as soon as he heard the news, Seal wrote a letter to prepare for Christmas to bring the recovered Hermione back to his warm little home, and the 2 families had a happy and warm Christmas together. But the reality is often so tragic. For the summer vacation, the 2 families unanimously decided to work overtime on Christmas to get some money. No, it can be said that because of Christmas, both the police work of Shire's mother, the doctor's work of the Granger family and Shire's father have ushered in the peak period. After all, it is the end of the year. Even many criminals have begun to rush their performance. The 2 families were very busy, so Seal's request was normally rejected by the 2 families. Seal, who received the reply, looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle unconsciously after reading the letter, and silently left 2 lines of clear tears. Seal even began to wonder if Lockhart had killed Rick himself. When Shire went to see Hermione on a daily basis and told Hermione about it, Hermione's laugh was trembling. That's right, it's almost Christmas, and Hermione has recovered most of it. At least it looks like it's Hermione, not a beautiful short and white, but there is still some cat hair on her body. Madame Pomfrey said she would be well before Christmas, and that Hermione might be in time for the Christmas party. Hearing Madame Pomfrey's words, Ciel's last hope was shattered. He originally wanted to take care of Hermione to avoid the Christmas party, but now it was obvious that he couldn't dodge. As the dates continued to come, the school began to decorate the school's auditorium. The Christmas tree was continuously transported into the auditorium by Hagrid, and the professors continued to cast magic in the auditorium to decorate the auditorium. Even because of the relationship between Lockhart's sponsorship and Valentine's Day, there are even some pink love-shaped arrangements in the auditorium, which look really good. Professor McGonagall will take him to the auditorium when he is free. Professor McGonagall's idea is very simple, he just wants to be honest with Ciel. Sounds like a big plan. At first, Ciel was still a little emotional, but later, Ciel simply gave up, and with the idea of joining if he couldn't beat him, Ciel also began to live in the auditorium. What kind of flame-winged bird, a silly-looking earth element magic doll, etc., and even use the fire element to solidify a small firework that was continuously set off in the auditorium. Charles was constantly arranged like a ruthless machine, escaping. I can't escape, but at least I can make myself look more comfortable. The trial will still come. During the day on Christmas Eve, when he went to pick up Hermione to be discharged from the hospital, Ciel received 3 waves of molestation from Senior Sister. When those creatures that looked like goblins were dressed in the clothes of the little angel Cupid, and beating gongs and drums, they read the molestation from Senior Sister aloud in front of Ciel, and Ciel was so ashamed that he even wanted to kill Lockhart. Then go to Azkaban for further education. In the end, Ciel fled back to the dormitory together under Hermione's strange eyes, let alone Ciel. When Hermione realized that these gongs and drums were pretending to be little angels in fairy tales, Hermione, who had just been discharged from the hospital, also escaped. It felt like something inside was shattered. She didn't even get angry at Ciel, who was molested by her senior, and returned to the dormitory in a daze. In fact, the matter of being molested by Senior Sister really can't be blamed on Ciel. Everyone knows this. After all, Ciel's appearance is absolutely capable of beating in both the East and the West, plus the ears that are very similar to the elf. It will indeed make countless big sisters give birth to the mind of teasing. Of course, the most important thing is that although Ciel is incomparably sculpted in front of familiar people, in the face of unfamiliar people, Ciel still looks aloof and even sometimes domineering, just like facing Lockhart at the time. This also led to many strange big sisters always having some strange emotions towards Ciel. Of course, putting these aside, Ciel hid in the dormitory for a whole day because of the 3 love letters just now, and the messengers who came from Lockhart had no choice but to let Ciel go to find other targets. Until the dinner party, Ciel thought the nightmare was over, but he didn't expect the real nightmare to begin. When the 4 of them came to the auditorium together, the layout in the auditorium was really beautiful. There were small snowflakes constantly floating in the sky. From time to time, a charflame bird would fly over the head. Fireworks are constantly going off. There are 4 Christmas trees on the ground. The professors of the 4 colleges obviously put some thought into it. The Christmas tree of each college is very unique. The Christmas tree is full of gifts full of college characteristics, and there are some cute little children on the ground. The golem walked swayingly holding hands. Everything looked so beautiful. After everyone was seated, Dumbledore gave some simple speeches and started the Christmas dinner. Charles was very happy that Lockhart did not stand up to do things. He enjoyed talking and laughing with the 3 of them. Have your own Christmas dinner. Of course, things will never be so simple. Just as Ciel was enjoying his meal, the door of the auditorium was rudely pushed open, and the loud noise startled everyone. A closer look at the little angels during the day appeared again. They stood in a line, walked to Charles and began to read the love letter that was not sent out during the day. Everyone listened to the words of Tiger and Wolf on the love letter and showed a happy smile. Only Hermione's face began to turn from red to black, and because of some words of tiger and wolf from black to red. In short, it was uncertain. Ciel's good mood came to an abrupt end when the door was pushed open. Hearing the little angels reading aloud constantly, and the expressions of happiness and seasons of the people around him, Ciel's face was as black as a pot. The bottom is the same. Enough. Finally, at the third letter, Charles slapped the table and stood up. Then Ciel looked at Dumbledore sitting at the main table with a broken face and smiled. Teacher, do you think that if I surrender to Azkaban, will my sentence be reduced? Chapter 103_Second Victim. No, little Ciel. Hearing Ciel's question, Dumbledore smiled and answered Ciel's question. After Dumbledore finished answering Ciel as if jokingly, everyone burst into laughter, and even some boys no longer looked at Ciel with jealous expressions, but instead looked sympathetic. When Ciel heard Dumbledore's ridicule, he felt like he had swallowed a ton of dynamite. He was successfully beaten by Lockhart, so the irritable Ciel jumped up successfully and started facing him. Lockhart, who was not at the table, began to frantically spit out the silenced words. He even stared viciously at the constant threats from the goblins or angels who were lining up, and even took out his wand and was ready to give them a big shot at any time. Little angels, employed by Lockhart, are surprisingly tough, saying that this is work and a task that must be completed. Hearing that, Ciel said that his collapse was even worse, and in the end, he was dragged out of the auditorium by Hermione and Ron dancing. After Ciel was dragged away, when Ciel's trash talk completely disappeared in the auditorium was quiet for a few seconds, and then a huge burst of laughter broke out. Even the very serious Professor McGonagall turned her back to cover it. He smiled for a while. Of course, Ciel didn't know about these things. At this time, Ciel even felt that his lungs were about to be blown up by the idiot Lockhart. That is to say, Lockhart is no longer in the auditorium, otherwise Charles vowed to beat him until he couldn't take care of himself. The two were amused looking at Ciel, who was losing his temper in the lounge. Even Hermione felt that what Lockhart did this time was really stupid. In fact, as long as it was sent to the target, it was obviously a good idea, but Lockhart told me to read it aloud, which was very frustrating. The two comforted Ciel for a while before letting Ciel quiet down. Looking at Ciel sitting by the fire with a gloomy face, Ron finally couldn't help but patted Ciel on the shoulder, and the three of them together sitting in front of the fire. After calming down, Ciel also felt that his 5 internal organs protested at this time. Ciel, who couldn't eat half of it, experienced the death of the society, and it was no wonder that Ciel felt hungry. Turning to look at Ron and Hermione, I saw that they were also rubbing their stomachs with sad faces, and they were obviously very hungry. Suddenly, 3 neat grunts sounded, and the 3 of them looked at each other and smiled. Hermione was still quite witty, and said triumphantly, asking Harry to come back with something to eat, but he didn't know when Harry would come back. The 3 scolded Lockhart again and waited for Harry's takeout, but they didn't see Harry appear for a long time, so helpless Charles had to stand up and go back to the bedroom to take out his small suitcase. Hermione and Ron cheered as soon as they saw Ciel's small suitcase. After all, it was really uncomfortable to be hungry. Before Ciel greeted them, the two couldn't wait to get into the small suitcase and wait. Charles opened fire. Under the operation of Shah-ur, when the 3 of them climbed out of the suitcase with a full meal, they felt that something was wrong. There were already many people in the lounge, but without exception, they were all far away from the 3 of them. Far away. Everyone's eyes looking at the 3 people began to evade, and they didn't even dare to look at the 3 of them. Just as the 3 of them were confused, Hermione with sharp eyes suddenly realized that there was no Harry in the crowd. Hermione immediately told Ciel about this discovery, and Ciel also found something wrong, frowning just as he was about to get up to find Headmaster Dumbledore. Harry was led in by Professor McGonagall through the door of the lounge. Harry was clearly in a low mood while holding a pile of food. After Professor McGonagall glanced around the crowd, he sternly warned everyone that it was okay to go out alone, and then just left. With the departure of Professor McGonagall, the crowd dispersed as quickly as they saw the plague. Charles looked suspiciously at Harry, who was not in high spirits. What happened? Harry heard CL's question, put down the food in his hand, and explained to the three helplessly. After Seal was taken away by the two of you, I tried to get enough food to go back to the bedroom, but halfway through I found Nick floating in midair, and Simon was behind Nick. Harry said a little aggrievedly, when I found Simon, he had already been petrified, but unfortunately I was the only one at the scene, and more unfortunately, was discovered by a passing couple. The girls screamed drew Dumbledore. I was then taken for questioning. Harry continued with some frustration. The Christmas dinner had to be cancelled because of this incident. Damn it, why does this kind of thing always make me neat? As soon as Harry finished speaking, Ron asked in surprise, Harry, are you sure you're not the heir? Harry was surprised to hear Ron's question. Absolutely not. Unless I'm sleepwalking in the middle of the night or being controlled. Even Hermione thought it was too coincidental. It's too coincidental, Harry. Simon just said at the duel club that you can control snakes and have a Parseltongue, and then he's attacked. I'm guessing right, the murderer has absolutely nothing to do with you. Hearing the analysis of the two, CL's inner eyes almost rolled to the sky. Where is there any hatred? Unless he is a diehard fan of Voldemort, who would have hatred with a child. But on the surface, he still went up and patted Harry's shoulder lightly. Brother, thank you for blocking the gun for me. At least no one will mention my experience at the Christmas dinner now. Hearing what Seal said, the three of them rolled their eyes and gave it to Seal. Ignoring the funny Seal, the three of them started a small meeting in front of the bonfire, constantly analyzing who the murderer was. Because Seal already knew the whole plot, he sat idle and held the one that Harry just brought back. Dessert was eaten one bite after another, and even started to be stunned. Seeing Seal like this, Hermione suddenly looked at Seal as if she had remembered something. Charles, honestly, do you know anything? Hermione's tone was serious. Harry and Ron also turned to look at Charles, who was in a daze, when they heard Hermione's words. Hermione's question made the caught Seal stunned for a moment. He swallowed the food in his mouth with difficulty, and looked at the three serious people. He was about to fool around, and then he thought about it and dismissed the idea. Okay, I know something, but I'm sorry, I promised no one else to say it. The hope that ignited in the eyes of the three of them was quickly extinguished after hearing CL's answer. But CL's sentence made the eyes of the three of them lit up with little stars again. It's not that I can't give you some hints. Listen carefully, don't focus on one thing, connect all the strange things. You can find clues, at least you can know what is in the secret room. Hearing CL's words, Ron immediately complained, damn, it's as if you didn't say anything. Hearing Ron's complaints about Charles, he could only helplessly shrug his shoulders. This is the course that Loudeng arranged for them, and he must not interfere. Thinking of this, Seal seems to have discovered a very strange point. In the course that Loudeng gave the three of them, it seems that there may be no place for him, or that his own course is not the same course as the three of them. Chapter 104 Guinea's Panic. Although Seal seemed to have said everything, but it seemed that he didn't say anything, the three of them hated it a little bit, but without any clues, the three decided to follow CL's prompt to start an investigation. All of this was within CL's expectations, but Seal did not follow the detective plan of the three, for the simple reason that CL's lessons began to get heavier. Dumbledore is now fully instructing CL's wizarding magic, which has led to the fact that Seal spends almost all of his spare time with Dumbledore. Even the rare weekend off days will be pulled by Dumbledore to attend some magical seminars and the like. But there is one thing to say, after Dumbledore's operation, CL's magic level has indeed improved a lot, and even the attitude of looking down on wizard magic at the beginning has begun to change. Elemental magic is really powerful. As the existence of ancient war magic, the power of AoE damage and single body magic, element magic is the second and no one dares to say the first. However, some of the wizard's magic is more flexible, and in the case of one-on-one, some of the wizard's magic often causes some unexpected effects. Therefore, Seal did not complain about Dumbledore's extracurricular learning. After all, Compared to boring Muggle textbooks, as long as it was magic, the extremely fast achievement feedback really made Seal unable to stop. The days went by like this, and Seal was immersed in the happy world of magic, and the three little ones also straightened out the clues under the constant investigation. It was another Friday night, and Seal was bored sitting in front of the fire looking at the magic book in his hand. Dumbledore went out because of some things, so Seal could only sit, alone, in the lounge. There were constant laughter from the little wizards around, and the long period of comfort seemed to make the little wizards forget the previous two attacks, and everyone finally had a smile on their faces, even with the three of Harry and Shaw. Your situation is much better. But Seal misses the old days a little. The reason is very simple. I don't know when it started. Some students in the lower grades and the same grade began to appear around Seal and regarded Seal as a treasure for answering questions. Especially some female students in the lower grades. If you ask the class, just ask the class, why are you blushing? Especially at this moment, a little girl whom Seal didn't know was holding a book and looked at Seal with a red face. At this moment, Seal really felt abnormally big. Very simple, the little girl asked about the potion. Seal, a player who didn't even dare to touch bugs, really couldn't help the potion, but looking at the expectant eyes of the little girl, Seal felt a little bit regretful for letting Hermione follow Harry and Ron to investigate. After all, when Hermione was there, these gangsters, Yin Yang and Yan Yan, would always do their best under Hermione's guarding eyes, and would never come to trouble Shaw. Just when Seal had a headache and didn't know how to answer the little girl, the door of the lounge was pushed open at once. Hermione took the lead, and the three of them rushed towards Seal. Seeing Hermione, Shelton was ecstatic and said to the little girl, "I'm sorry, maybe I will have something to do next. By the way, maybe my potion grades are not very good. You can ask Hermione to learn, ma'am." After speaking, no matter what the little girl's reaction was, she ran towards the three of them as if they were running away. She just raised her hand, and before Seal said hello, she saw Hermione wave her hand, and Harry and Ron behind them looked like queens. The faithful dog Legs under his hand walked over Hermione and walked towards Seal. As high could be said, the two of them followed Hermione's back and left the lounge quickly, leaving behind a large group of melon-eating youths who looked at each other. "Should we tell Professor McGonagall? Isn't this situation a kidnapping?" a first-year girl asked weakly to the senior next to her. Senior's sister also shook her head in confusion. "I don't know either, but I think the four of them should have a good relationship and kidnapping shouldn't be possible, right?" Everyone didn't pay attention. Only Ginny quietly followed after seeing the three of them fighting off Seal. The words were divided into two parts, not to mention the confused people who were eating melons in the lounge. At this time, even Seal looked at the two people who were holding him, and Hermione who was walking in front. I kept muttering in my heart, I didn't make any mistakes to make Hermione hot, but even if I was molested, Seal kept his distance as a gentleman. No, it should be said that Seal has never been a man since he met Hermione. Momo's help. Looking at the three people with serious faces, the road they walked became more and more deviated. Until now, there are few people around, and the murmur in Shaw's heart is constantly getting louder. Even when he was 3 years old, he was taken by his mother to the women's bathhouse. All things Charles recalled. Finally a few people came to Myrtle's bathroom. After Harry and Ron dragged the struggling Seal in, before the three of them could speak, Seal took the initiative to hold his head and squatted in defense. "I'm sorry. I was wrong." Hearing Seal's words, the three of them looked at each other in confusion. "What's wrong?" Hermione looked at Seal with some doubts, and Seal was also stunned when she heard Hermione's words. The four of them looked at each other awkwardly for a while, and then Seal came to his senses, stood up embarrassedly and patted his clothes, looked at the three of them like an angry little daughter-in-law, and whispered, "I thought you guys, the three of them, are going to beat me up. All of them are so fierce." Hearing Seal's complaints, Hermione rolled her eyes helplessly and said to Seal, "Don't make trouble, let's get down to business. We have found the monster in a secret room." "It's a basilisk, right?" Hermione eagerly waited for Seal's confirmation, and Seal looked at Hermione in shock. Although Hermione would know sooner or later, it was too fast. Seeing Hermione's determined look, Seal sighed helplessly. Yes, it's a basilisk, how did you know? Hermione was very pleased when she heard Seal's confirmation. She raised her head happily and said to Seal, we investigated all the weird things this semester. Hagrid's chicken died, Harry could hear strange noises, but we couldn't hear it, and 2 people were petrified. Hermione paused and said, at your reminder, we decided to start searching according to the current clues. For this reason, I have read a lot of books. To be honest, the eyes of the basilisk killed him, but everyone was petrified. It bothered me for a long time, but finally Ron reminded me that they were not looking directly into the eyes of the basilisk. Said that Hermione was very proud here. Looking at Hermione's proud appearance, Seal sighed helplessly. You guessed it right, it's the basilisk. Dumbledore also knew about this, but he was very helpless. Yes, Dumbledore did not find the intersection of the Chamber of Secrets, but probably guessed that it was the basilisk. So we're helpless, aren't we? Hermione asked in disbelief. Seal thought about it and decided not to talk about 50 years ago, so he answered, yes. Hearing Seal's answer, the 3 of them lowered their heads in frustration, and no one noticed that Ginny was looking flustered outside the door. Chapter 105 Letter from the Far East. After finishing the conversation with the 3, Seal did not return to the lounge with the 3, but went directly to Dumbledore's office under the pretext of training. The hurried Seal even forgot that Dumbledore was not in the office at this time. Only Fawkes, who had just grown feathers, was dozing on his shelf. The stone monster sculpture at the door didn't even bother to ask for a password, so he just made way for Seal to go up. When Seal hurriedly pushed open the door of the office, he was annoyed when he saw the empty office. Check out your own brain. But when Seal saw Fawkes on the shelf, he seemed to think of something. He quickly ran to the desk and wrote a simple letter to his teacher to report on the current situation of the trio. After that, he asked Fawkes for a long time. Only then did Fawkes's lazy letter in his mouth turn into a flame and disappear. Seeing Fawkes disappearing, Charles breathed a sigh of relief, wiped the sweat from his forehead, and wondered whether his talk would have any effect on Dumbledore's plan. Looking at the empty office, Seal's first experience of coming to steal Phoenix after meeting, couldn't help but feel a little amused. Seal, who was not in a hurry to leave, began to wander around the office. Soon, an open letter appeared. Get Charles's attention. The reason is very simple. There are postmarks all over the letter. It is obvious that this letter was sent by Muggle methods. Dumbledore, who was in the magical world, received a letter from the Muggle world. This discovery made Seal excited all of a sudden. Could it be that Dumbledore had some secrets in the Muggle world that were not described in the original books? Seal climbed to Dumbledore's seat at once and sat down. With a trembling heart, he slowly extended his sinful hand to the letter. When opening the letter, the full typewriter font almost brought tears to Seal's eyes. Compared with the handwritten Hualagusaw handwriting, the mechanical body in his heart is obviously more nostalgic for Seal. After trying hard to calm down, Seal secretly began to read the letter. Dear Dumbledore. It's been a long time since I saw my old friend. I have to say that the weather in the Far East is really uncomfortable. It must be almost spring in the UK now, but the weather in the Far East is still snowing heavily. I have been here for several months. The political situation of Muggles has begun to turmoil, and even the political situation of wizards has begun to turmoil. There are resistance and arrests everywhere on the street, which makes me have to be very careful. In order not to reveal whereabouts, but the plan is still going very smoothly. If nothing else, I might be able to go back to warm England in a few months. Don't forget to promise me. Oh yes, speaking of accidents, something very shocking happened here in the Far East. A very serious accident occurred in a place where Muggles researched to generate electricity. It was very serious. I heard that it might cause the whole of Europe to be implicated. Fortunately, the Muggles in this country still have a bloody nature that is not common in Europeans. One after another into danger to save their country. Even later, many wizards stopped hiding themselves, completely disregarded the existence of the secrecy law, stood up and participated in the rescue, and even gave their lives. I watched from a distance for a while, and I have to say, this scene is really shocking. This may be the first time I have seen a scene where wizards and muggles work together. But very strange things happened. From what I understand, many wizards who survived lost their magic power. This is not good news. The Ministry of Magic in the Far East quickly blocked the news. People who know now do not much, but I think this is a threat. I don't know how the Ministry of Magic in the Far East will deal with this issue. If it is handled improperly, it will definitely cause a shock to the magical world. I decided that if the Ministry of Magic in the Far East really can't handle this matter, I may secretly help them. Get rid of anyone in the know. Finally, let me remind you, don't forget our plan. The signature at the end is a vertical bar in the middle of a circle, which is similar to the Chinese character in Chinese, except that the mouth becomes 0. Seal looked at the letter with some doubts. It was obvious that Dumbledore was carrying out a plan behind his back, and this plan was even related to the Far East if there was no accident. This made Seal a little puzzled. Throughout the novel, there was never anything about the Far East. This made Seal a little uncertain about what Dumbledore was doing, but if the disaster mentioned in the letter was no accident, it should have been Chernobyl, and the fact that nuclear radiation would make wizards lose their magic power really shocked Seal. Seal sat on Dumbledore's chair and began to think wildly. Suddenly, as if thinking of something, Seal jumped down and started rushing towards the bedroom. In his heart, he began to curse his own stupidity. What kind of stocks do you want? If you manage it properly, you can earn enough money to retire early by relying on Far East. For the sake of future happiness, Shatter ran extraordinarily hard. What Seal didn't know was that, not long after he ran out, Dumbledore appeared in the office accompanied by the chirping of flames and phoenixes. Dumbledore had just appeared, and when Seal was there, the motionless portrait began to talk to Dumbledore about Seal's words and deeds in the office. Dumbledore was very tired, sitting on the chair that Shire had just made, rubbing his temples in his hands and listening to the reports from the portraits. When the portraits said that Charles peeked at the letter he put on the table, Dumbledore did not have any unexpected expressions. According to Charles's character, this kind of muggle letter appeared on the desk of the headmaster of the magic school. Charles couldn't contain his curiosity. Dumbledore waved his hand. There is nothing about the letter, and the letter doesn't say anything useful, it's just regular contact. He will know the plan sooner or later. As soon as the words fell, the portrait began to discuss at a high speed. At this time a witch stood up and stopped the portraits who were discussing. Dumbledore, Charles is still a student, you should not hide it from him. After he finished speaking, Dumbledore leaned back on the chair as if to answer the portrait's question, and as if speaking to himself. Maybe it's time to let Seal know what I think. Is there any connection between the Horcruxes? This matter cannot be delayed. Seal may be the last insurance I put on Harry's side. Chapter 106_Dumbledore's Plan. Since Seal came back from Dumbledore's office, he was constantly writing letters in the dormitory by himself, and he was trying his best to get Chi and Seal. At first, Mr. William didn't want to help Charles, because Mr. William felt that Charles was still a child after all, and it was a sensitive topic related to the Far East. Obviously, it should not be discussed by Charles at his age. Helpless, Seal gave too much, not to mention that Seal also moved out of the school's prophecy class as an endorsement. Mr. William also reluctantly agreed to Seal's proposal, and the two reached an agreement through constant correspondence. A small alliance. The purpose of the same class is very simple. Never let the girls know about it. Even Mr. William brought Mr. Granger, who was also in dire straits after being misled by his wife's words and deeds. The three men swore absolutely to guard your own small vault. So under the instigation of Seal, the three of them invested their entire net worth in rubles, and they did send a sum according to what Seal said, but none of the three moved the money. After all, rubles or not really will fall, but time will test. For nearly a week, Seal basically spent the rest of the time, except in class, quietly focusing on making money. For the sake of a happy life in the future, Seal feels very happy now. Of course, if it wasn't for the roar of Dumbledore from the White Phoenix that appeared beside him, it is estimated that Seal would be happier. That's right, Charles skipped Dumbledore's course for almost a week for the sake of quality of life. When Seal woke up under Dumbledore's roar, Seal realized that he was about to face the wrath of the strongest teacher in the world. The cold sweat left on Seal's head all at once. With the feeling of death, Seal came to the door of the principal's office. He was thinking about what reason he should use to make a sophistry. The stone carving opened at once. Seal, who hadn't reacted yet, felt that his feet had left the ground and flew into the principal's room in an instant. Dumbledore saw the flying Seal, put down the Elder Wand in his hand angrily, and looked at Seal. "Give you 3 minutes to explain what you've been up to this week," Dumbledore asked angrily. Hearing Dumbledore's words, Seal's face was full of flattery in an instant, and he obediently leaned in front of Dumbledore and said cautiously, "Nothing, teacher, I'm just taking my father and Hermione's father to do it. With a little pocket money, you can't always think about your pension, can you?" Hearing Seal's answer, Dumbledore felt that he was both angry and funny. The point of his anger was that Seal skipped class without telling him, or to make money. The character of this greedy villain really made Dumbledore very helpless, but the good news was that his pension was finally saved. Shaking his head and looking at the flattering Seal, Dumbledore said helplessly, "Seriously, if you were in the Ministry of Magic, you would definitely do better than me." When Seal heard Dumbledore, he knew immediately that his teacher was not blaming him for skipping classes for a week, so he quickly nodded his head. "The teacher is really far-sighted, and I think I can." Hearing Seal's words, he immediately gave Dumbledore an angry laugh. "No, I mean, you will definitely be the big traitor by Fudge's side at the Ministry of Magic, which will make it easier for me to face the Ministry of Magic." Hearing Dumbledore's complaints, Seal's smile froze on his face in an instant, and Seal, who was galloping past like 10,000 grass and mud horses, didn't know what expression to use to face Dumbledore's sharp complaints. Looking at the embarrassed Seal, Dumbledore waved his hand to motion for Seal to sit down, and then said to Seal, "How's Harry doing recently?" When Seal sat down and heard Dumbledore's question, he didn't feel so good. He had been writing letters all week, so how could he care about the 3 little ones? The helpless Seal could only nod his head in embarrassment. "Should it be all right?" Seal answered uncertainly. Seeing the appearance of Seal, Dumbledore knew that what he said was another nonsense, and it was simply a question for nothing. Helpless, Dumbledore rubbed his temples. "Charles, all I can tell you is that Harry is the first step in the success of the plan. And I believe you should be interested in whether there is a connection between Voldemort's Horcruxes." Dumbledore pointed to the Ravenclaw crown covered by a glass cover on the table and said to Seal. Before Seal could reply, Dumbledore continued, "Not to mention whether the Horcrux is really related to Harry, I think this should also be of interest." Hearing Dumbledore's words, Seal's eyes widened as he looked at the old man across from him, and his expression immediately became serious. "You know, Harry is the Horcrux thing." Seeing the serious Seal, Dumbledore laughed and answered Seal's words slowly. "It's not hard to see, isn't it? No matter how many generations the Potter family went on, no one was a Parseltongue, but Harry had this talent again, and Harry's mother was a Muggle child." Dumbledore looked at the nervous Seal with a smile, waved his hand to interrupt what Seal wanted to say, and continued. "I know Voldemort too well. I know exactly what his talents are, and although I am called a white magician, Shire must know that I also understand black magic, but I just disdain to use it. After you give me this crown when I was there, I found all the books on Horcrux." Quote. When Seal heard Dumbledore's words, his heart was turbulent, because he didn't dare to say anything else. In fact, to be honest, Seal really doesn't like Harry and Ron's reckless character, but it is undeniable that Harry's loyalty is also a character that Seal likes, plus he doesn't want to make it difficult for Hermione, so Charles silently recognized the existence of Harry and Ron. Seal thought about a lot of things in his head, but he finally sighed helplessly, looked at the wise old man opposite him, and said helplessly, "Teacher, I'm really careful, but I just hate Voldemort disturbing me. I have no idea about Horcruxes. On the contrary, I still think that immortality is a punishment for human beings." Quote. Hearing CL's words, Dumbledore smiled even more happily, nodded and said nothing, and continued to look at Seal with a smile. Seal also looked helplessly at the old man across from him, and finally asked the question that had been in his heart for a long time. "Teacher, what are your plans?" Chapter 107-Third Victim. Dumbledore just smiled when he heard Seal's question, and did not answer Seal directly. "It's not time yet, Seal, you are still too young. Now you should pay more attention to school life and your own strength, do you understand?" Dumbledore said to Seal earnestly, and when he heard Dumbledore's words, Seal touched his chin and whispered to himself, "Strength." Dumbledore also heard Seal's words, but he didn't say much, and ate the sweets in front of himself. Seal didn't think much, stood up and said goodbye to Dumbledore. It was time to go back to the bedroom. Just as Seal was about to open the door, Dumbledore seemed to remember something and stopped Seal. "Wait, Seal, I just remembered, I prepared a pet similar to Fox for you." Why? "I mean, there are some differences." Quote. Dumbledore's remarks were hesitant and vague, but Seal didn't mind at all. Compared with the way the wizard moves, Fox is really the best seat. Dumbledore, the most powerful person in the world, can't compare to Fox. But it's a pity, no matter how Seal seduces Fox, Fox just refuses to follow Seal. It's the kind of play that can be played together, but go further, don't think about it. Thinking of this, Seal gave Fox a stern glance at Fox, who was dozing, and made an international friendly gesture towards Fox in his heart, and then scolded him. "Scumbag. No, scumbag." Although he was madly complaining, he still looked at Dumbledore opposite with a smile on the surface. "Really? Teacher, what pet did you give me?" Dumbledore looked at what Seal was expecting, thought for a moment and replied, "It's your favorite animal, and if you really want to say it, it should be more comfortable than Fox, and it's more windy than Fox. Don't worry. Let's do it. Don't forget to give Seal a look that I understand you." Hearing Dumbledore's words, Seal's eyes were about to see little stars, and he could not wait to pick up his own seat now, so Seal couldn't wait to urge Dumbledore to take him to see it. "Next time you need to know what magical animals are." Under the constant offensive of Seal's iron pestle grinding into needles, Dumbledore finally had no choice but to say that Seal would receive his pet during the summer vacation, and Newt would send it to him. Hearing Dumbledore talking about Newt, Seal was stunned for a moment. Did he finally see Newt after traveling for so long? The protagonist of the legendary Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Dumbledore looked at Seal's excited look and was a little puzzled, but he didn't ask more, just said lightly, "Newt and his wife will go to Paris for the summer vacation, and he will find you then, don't worry." Quote. Hearing Dumbledore's words, Charles froze for a moment. "Is Mr. Newt the surprise for my summer vacation?" Hearing Seal's question, Dumbledore thought for a while, then looked at Seal with a meaningful smile. "No, little Seal, surprises need to be kept secret." After he finished speaking, he signaled that it was time for Seal to go back to the dormitory. Seal couldn't understand, what was the surprise that caused Dumbledore to be so mysterious and reluctant to say more. But it was getting late, and Seal didn't think too much about it. It was business to return to the lounge quickly. So Charles started to walk to Gryffindor's lounge with question marks on his head, thinking about Dumbledore's plans, his pets, and the surprises of the summer vacation as he walked. There are clues to many things, but the combination of when he got up, Charles was confused. Seal thought as he walked. The serious Seal didn't notice that there were fewer and fewer people around. No, it should be said that even if Seal noticed, he wouldn't care too much. In Seal's opinion, the basilisk is no matter what will not attack themselves. Not to mention the rich fire element and earth element in his body, it is definitely the most disgusting thing for the basilisk who likes dampness and darkness. Even according to the plot, Seal felt that he could not be attacked, so Seal was very relieved walking in an empty hallway. Having said that, things often don't go as Seal thought. The elements began to frantically move. This abnormal situation immediately interrupted Seal's thinking. When Seal came back to his senses, he felt a stench coming from behind him, accompanied by a giant rushing over him. Of rumbling. Seal, who had reacted, rushed towards the wall next to the corridor. Fortunately, Seal's physical exercise never stopped. With his physical fitness, a huge black shadow rubbed the corner of Seal's clothes and rushed over. At the corner of the wall, he threw a char in the form of a geese falling into the sand, and when he raised his head, he saw a huge snake-like monster rushing forward. Seal, who was stunned for a moment, immediately thought of what it was. Obviously, the object in this secret room was targeting him this time, and uncharacteristically, he did not use his eyes to attack. Thinking of this, Seal immediately closed his eyes and pulled out his wand to activate the earth perception of the earth element. Immediately, a 20-meter-long giant snake appeared in Seal's mind in the form of black and white dots. Seeing that the basilisk missed a hit, he immediately turned his body and raised his head to use his eyes to stare at Shah-Ur, but unfortunately Seal closed his eyes. This discovery made the basilisk even more angry, and the big yellow eyes stared at Shah-Ur. At this time, Shah-Ur was also extremely nervous. He never expected this thing to find him, and to be honest, the first few were all petrified, so why did he play Savage Collision when it was his turn? Seal was madly complaining about the double standard of the basilisk, and at the same time, he was constantly thinking about how to face the attack of this behemoth. The big basilisk doesn't matter so much. Watching Seal standing there with his eyes closed, the irritability in the basilisk's eyes became more and more obvious, and finally the basilisk still couldn't control the irritability in his eyes, and opened his mouth to leak poison. Ya rushed towards Seal again. Seal was taken aback when he saw the basilisk like this. Fortunately, he was not a vegetarian. He waved his wand quickly, and a huge fireball quickly formed in front of Seal. The bright blood red showed that this fireball was definitely not so very provocative. As Seal pushed forward, the fireball flew in the direction pointed by Seal's wand. The basilisk looked at the flying fireball, stuck out his tongue irritably, and then closed his big mouth and eyes. Without stopping the sprint, he slammed into Seal's big fireball. Chapter 108-Wounded Char. Seal's fireball still caused some damage to the basilisk. Amidst the loud explosion, a thin layer of flame burned on the basilisk and rushed out. But it didn't take long for the basilisk to grow some thin scales from under the skin to top off the outermost burning scales, and then continued to charge towards Seal. In this scene, I saw the death of Shah-Ur. My good fellow, it also comes with healing, although his fire element can't catch up with Grindelwald who taught him, but it is also comparable to the existence of ordinary fire. Co-authoring the basilisk is just a matter of peeling off the skin. Looking at the approaching basilisk, Seal didn't think too much about it. Time was too hasty. Seal didn't even make a plan, so he had no choice but to turn around and start running towards the headmaster's room, expecting Dumbledore to hear the voice. Come to the rescue immediately. But Seal's two legs couldn't even run the 20-meter guy behind him without legs. Helpless, Seal kept throwing stone walls made of granite behind him while howling for help. The sound of the stone wall collapsing from behind kept stirring up Seal's nerves like a talisman, and Seal could only run forward desperately. After running for an unknown amount of time, Seal finally saw the door of Dumbledore's office, but the voice behind him approached Seal. Just when Seal was about to turn around and start desperately, Seal heard a loud phoenix chirping, and then Seal only felt a pain in his calf, and then fell a dog and ate shit. After that, Seal felt very tired and sleepy. Slowly lost consciousness. In the vagueness, Seal always felt that his arm was itchy, and he wasted a lot of strength, and then Seal slowly opened his eyes. The strange ceiling, if it wasn't for Dumbledore's face in Shaw. The moment opened his eyes, he appeared in front of Seal, and Seal thought he had passed through again. How do you feel about Seal? Dumbledore asked Seal's body indifferently. Poke the victim. The chrysanthemum in the chrysanthemum room is a little bit pop. It's not bad, but the arm is a little itchy, Shah-Ur replied weakly, but the sound he made was not so standard. Surprised that his speech was not standard, Seal immediately checked his teeth with his tongue. Well, it's great that both front teeth are gone. Seal looked at Dumbledore, who was snickering beside him, with a lifeless expression on his face. Shutter turned his head and glanced at the opposite side with difficulty, and saw a small brown hairy ball beside him, lying on his stomach and sleeping soundly. Before Seal could say yes, Dumbledore continued beside him, I used a little method to get Hermione to get a good night's sleep. When you were sent over, she was crying fast. Out of breath. After speaking, he did not forget to wink and tease Seal, who had lost his front teeth, and then continued, as for your front teeth, don't worry, Madame Pomfrey said that they will grow back long ago. After speaking, he snickered in spite of Seal's angry eyes. Seal looked helplessly at Dumbledore, who looked like an old urchin next to him. He vaguely remembered that he seemed to have heard the phoenix's cry at the end, so Seal immediately asked, Where's the basilisk, teacher? Did you catch him? Hearing Seal's question, Dumbledore shook his head helplessly and said to Seal, Unfortunately, the basilisk had already fled when I arrived. If Fawkes sensed something was wrong with you, he would have rushed over in time. I may not have known you were under attack. Hearing Dumbledore's words, Seal was also a little helpless, and silently complained about his character, and then the master and apprentice sat quietly like this. After an unknown amount of time, Dumbledore sighed. Charles, I'm sorry I didn't arrive in time. If Fawkes wasn't there, you might have been dead by then, Dumbledore said slowly. Hearing Dumbledore's words, Seal shook his head. It's not your problem, teacher. I know what's in the secret room and the murderer behind the scenes, but I'm too confident. I believe everything I see, Charles said in a low mood. And I seem to have lost my vigilance against danger. That is, after returning from Newmungard, I was too confident in my strength, so much that I knew what the enemy was, but I didn't understand everything about the enemy, and I ended up eating it myself. After all the trouble, it's good that Fawkes is here. Seal's mood is very low. That's right, since Seal came back from Newmungard, Seal, who has mastered the two elements, has unconsciously swelled a little, and even faced Dumbledore sometimes unconsciously gave birth. A sense of superiority. The reason is very simple. At present, Seal is the only person in the world who completely uses two elements in Class 1. Seal felt that he was invincible for a while, but he forgot the lessons of others. Hearing Seal's words, Dumbledore laughed happily. It's great, Seal, it's really great that you can realize this for yourself. Never underestimate anyone, even if I'm caught off guard, I'll be caught off guard. Knocked down by a simple spell. Hearing Dumbledore's words, Seal smiled helplessly, then glanced at a huge scar on his calf and got angry. Don't worry, teacher, I won't forget it. When I get out of the hospital, I will go and check the information about this damn basilisk. Then, I will definitely avenge this scar's revenge myself. Seal lowered his spirits and regained his fighting spirit. Said through gritted teeth. Hearing Seal's words, Dumbledore's smile obviously deepened, and he said faintly, regarding the discharge from the hospital, I am sorry, Seal, Madame Pomfrey insists that you stay here for a full week or so, your leg hurts after all. Hearing Dumbledore's words, Seal was stunned for a moment. Didn't it just mean that it was already over? Dumbledore also stood up at this time and walked to the door. At the moment when the door was closed, a sentence reached Charles's ears, That's your front teeth. Hearing Dumbledore's words, Seal collapsed onto the bed like a deflated ball. After sighing helplessly, Seal noticed Hermione, who was still sleeping beside him. After touching his body, he finally found his wand under the pillow, and gently cast a spell to make Hermione fall asleep beside him. After sighing, Seal was ready to continue resting. But Seal was just about to rest, when he turned around and saw Hermione sleeping beside him. His face turned red all of a sudden. When had Seal, who had been single for 2 lifetimes, experienced this kind of battle? Looking at Hermione with her cute face asleep, Seal's heart skipped a beat involuntarily. Then Seal quickly turned his back to Hermione with his face flushed, and he didn't know how many times he recited the heart-clearing mantra silently. Chapter 109_4th Victim. Anyway, when Seal woke up the next day, Hermione by his side had disappeared, and I didn't know if Hermione would be angry. Seal accepted various examinations from Madame Pomfrey early in the morning with an uneasy mood. While Seal was still examining, rumors began to spread throughout Hogwarts. Some people said that Seal defeated the monster in the secret room, and some said that Seal was seriously injured and so on. When Hermione appeared in the auditorium with a blushing face, the lively discussion in the hall suddenly quieted down, and everyone looked at Hermione. Of course, Hermione didn't react at all, and walked quickly to Harry and Ron with her head down. "Is Charles okay?" Before Hermione could sit down, Harry's concerned voice came over. "We heard that Seal encountered a basilisk yesterday, and now the entire 8th floor has been blocked. We heard that all the magic traces left by Seal are in a mess." Ron continued. Hearing what the two of them said, Hermione rolled her eyes and replied, "Seal is fine, except for the 2 front teeth that were knocked out, everything else is fine. It is estimated that Madame Pomfrey will be able to release Seal in about a week or so." Out. Hearing Hermione's words, Harry and Ron both breathed a sigh of relief. The two really cared about Seal. They wanted to see Seal as soon as they heard the news this morning, but it was a pity that they were even in the school hospital. Madame Pomfrey drove him out without even entering the door. Soon, the news that Seal was okay changed the whole Hogwarts, and of course, Seal lost his front teeth, which soon aroused the ridicule of some Death Eaters, and gave Seal the title of Leaky Warrior. Of course, Seal didn't know about all of this. At this time, Seal was drinking the potion that was hard to swallow, and was fed Hermione's snacks from time to time, enjoying eating, sleeping, and eating such pigs. Life. As for the matter of Seal and Hermione were very tacit and did not say it, as if this matter did not exist. Soon it was time for Seal to be discharged from the hospital. Seal had just packed up his belongings and was about to say hello to Madame Pomfrey and leave the hospital. The door of the hospital was pushed open at once, and Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall led the petrified girls into the hospital quickly. Madame Pomfrey saw this situation and immediately dropped Seal and moved closer. Soon the three of them detected another basilisk attack. Seal looked at the girl's horrified expression and the mirror in her hand. "Understand what happened. Dumbledore, if this goes on, I think Hogwarts is going to be shut down. The Daily Prophet has reported on Hogwarts campus attacks many times, and now even the Ministry of Magic is putting pressure on us," Professor McGonagall said to Dumbledore worriedly. Dumbledore's eyes flashed when he heard Professor McGonagall's words. He glanced at Seal beside him, and motioned for Seal to hurry back to the dormitory. The next words were obviously not what Seal should understand at this stage. Shatter understood Dumbledore's meaning in seconds, and he didn't want to stay any longer. He glanced at Loudang and walked quickly to the dormitory, saying that today was the day when Shatter was discharged from the hospital, and none of those 3 people came. Seal felt something was wrong, and immediately trotted to the bedroom. The breathless Seal searched the restroom and the auditorium, but did not see Harry, Ron and Hermione. He immediately realized what he was doing. He turned around and started rushing towards Yao Jiniang's bathroom, regardless of the fatigue. When Shatter came to the bathroom, the whole bathroom was empty. Only Yao Jiniang, a ghost, was wandering back and forth between the toilets. "Yao Jiniang, have you seen Harry, Ron and Hermione?" Seal looked anxiously at Yao Jiniang, who was amusing herself. Yao Jiniang was very happy that someone finally talked to her. She was still a handsome little guy with the appearance of an elf, but the content of her words made Yao Jiniang not so happy. "Can't you just take care of me, little darling?" Yao Jiniang shyly swayed at Seal. In normal times, Seal might make fun of him, but now he is in a hurry. Where is Seal? "I have the heart to play this joke with Yao Jiniang. I asked if you saw it." Shatter asked angrily, looking at Yao Jiniang, who was floating in the air with a murderous look. Yao Jiniang was frightened, and tremblingly accused Fawcett of telling the situation just now. It turned out that during the week he was in the hospital, Harry really picked up Voldemort's diary, and also learned information from 50 years ago. After all arguments, Harry finally determined that this was the entrance to the secret room, but it was very difficult. It's a pity that Harry's series of inferences were overheard by Lockhart. At the request of Lockhart, the three of them reluctantly agreed to take Lockhart to the secret room together. Hearing this, Seal hurriedly pulled out his wand and pointed at the sink at the entrance to blast the fire element to the greatest extent possible. The loud noise spread throughout the school at once, and Seal didn't care about Yao Jiniang, who was stunned. Seeing the blasted hole, Seal jumped in immediately. Seal knew what kind of scum Lockhart was. If it really hurt Hermione, even if it was a perfectly controlled oblivion, Seal would kill this scum to vent his anger. Dumbledore, who was in the school's medical room, obviously heard the loud noise of Seal blasting the sink, smiled slightly, and said to Professor McGonagall, "I think the problem will be solved soon. I need to leave." Minerva. Then, under the surprised eyes of Professor McGonagall, he walked out quickly. The words are divided into two parts. At this time, Shire feels more like a water slide in an amusement park. It is constantly descending. If you want to describe it, Shire feels that the beginning of Infinite Horror can describe this state very well: cold, shake, spin up and down. I don't know how long it took Seal, but he came out of the pipe all of a sudden. Seal, who was sitting on the ground composed of the bones of various small animals, was obviously stunned for a moment. Then he quickly pulled out his wand and waved his hand, and 5 basketball-sized fireballs appeared around Seal, illuminating all the places around Seal. Looking at the bones in this huge space, Seal couldn't bear it. He pouted, wondering if these were built by Slytherin. This sewer is called a sewer if it sounds good, but isn't it a dungeon if it sounds bad? After complaining, Seal shook his head and cleared the messy thoughts in his mind. The most important thing at this time was to find Hermione quickly. Chapter 110 Self-inflicted Lockhart. Just as Seal took out the strength to suckle and ran forward, Harry wasn't feeling very well, and Lockhart's despicableness had been exposed at this moment. Time went back half an hour ago. Originally, the three of them were driving the road ahead, and Lockhart shivered and followed the three, but a piece of skin from the basilisk completely changed the situation. Just as Harry struggled to determine that it was a receded hide and not the basilisk's body, a dazzling red light flew towards Ron. Ron, who was attacked, was hit before he had time to dodge, and the bad wand in Ron's hand flew into Lockhart's hand behind him. Fortunately, Hermione usually trains with Seal when she has nothing to do, and occasionally participates in Dumbledore's small stove. Her body's reaction is much faster than her brain's. The moment she sees the red light, her backhand is a weapon that kills you and threw it back. Fortunately, Hermione's spell successfully hit Lockhart, but it only made Lockhart's wand fly out. Unfortunately, Lockhart still had Ron's broken wand in his hand. Know why it didn't fly out? So the situation of confrontation between the three came into being. Fortunately, Hermione was still witty. Knowing Lockhart's scumbag attributes, she could barely deal with it. Moreover, Hermione believed that Seal would definitely come back to find her, so she confronted him. Harry said the classic lines in Naruto. "Go away and save Ginny, I can handle it here." Harry instinctively wanted to refuse, but seeing Hermione's firm eyes, coupled with the jewels of the Ginix Weasley family, and being taken care of by Mrs. Weasley during the summer vacation, Harry gritted his teeth and turned back. Run away. Of course, Lockhart didn't stop all of this. Watching Harry start to run deep, Lockhart looked even more excited. When Harry walked away, Lockhart didn't dodge, stood up carelessly, pointed at a back slope where Hermione was hiding with Ron's broken wand and began to taunt. "Ha, what a confident girl, facing a grown-up wizard, delusionally thinking that she can beat me by herself," Lockhart said in a relentless tone to Hermione, who was hiding and didn't dare to show her face. At this time, Hermione was also a little flustered. Although she had just boasted and asked Harry to hand Lockhart to him to deal with, but Hermione had never participated in such a real wizard duel, and she was a little nervous at this time. Holding his wand tightly, he seemed to be constantly chanting the magic spells that could be used, trying to relieve his tension in this way. Seeing that Hermione didn't move, Lockhart became even more arrogant. "Ha, don't dare to come out, do you? It's okay. I won't kill you. Trust me, I'll just use a little magic to change it. Your memory, and then go out with this snakeskin and say I have resolved this crisis." Lockhart paused for a moment, and then a very perverted smile appeared on his face. "Look, it's another adventure novel. I will still stand at the top. As for the two children in it, I think Mr. Basilisk wouldn't let go of such deliciousness, would it?" Hearing Lockhart's words, Hermione's small temper suddenly came up, and now she finally understood why Charles hated Lockhart, the big peacock, in the first place. Hermione asked angrily, "Aren't you afraid of being reported? It is against the law to modify your memory without permission." Hearing Hermione's question, Lockhart laughed even more happily, and while walking slowly, he answered Hermione's question arrogantly. "Report? Who will report me? A werewolf? Or a ghoul? Or is it a snow monster? Don't make fun of the little girl. Stand up obediently. Don't worry, I will be very light. I can make it right in one fell swoop. Feel free to become my loyal fan." Hearing this, Hermione's anger couldn't bear it any longer, but the rational Hermione was not swept away by the anger. She simply stretched out her wand and shot a few shots at the place where the voice came from. "To kill you. Arms. Don't say that you really hit, but there is no soft use." Lockhart was ready to beg for mercy, but when the red light hit Lockhart, nothing happened. Lockhart also froze for a while, looked at Ron's broken wand in his hand, wondered for a moment, and then ran quickly again. Lockhart decided to give this little girl a hard time. As for just now the problem of the spell's failure, Lockhart can only regard it as Hermione's lack of learning. "Ha ha ha, it seems that God is standing by me." Lockhart laughed softly, and by walking and adding a roll, he appeared smoothly beside the back slope where Hermione was hiding. He, Lockhart, successfully bypassed. Years of sneak attack skills now revealed no doubt. On the other hand, because it was the first time that Hermione was a little nervous facing a wizard, she didn't notice Lockhart's detour, and she still put on the spells that she was good at without a brain. Looking at the nervous Hermione, Lockhart decided to thoroughly enjoy the fruits of his victory. After all, he was suppressed by Seal for the whole semester. When did he suffer such humiliation? Although the opposite was not Seal, it was Shah. "My friend, you can also satisfy your desire for revenge." Just when Hermione was still wondering why there was no sound on the other side, and if she was hit by coincidence, Lockhart was already standing less than 5 meters behind Hermione, and the nervous Hermione was about to shrink back and prepare to lead a wave of Lockhart. At the time, he was startled by Lockhart behind him. Looking at Lockhart, whose smile became more and more perverted, Hermione was already extremely nervous at this time. Her hands were clenching her wand and pointing at Lockhart. Her mind was blank. "Ha ha ha, I'm still a child, let me think about it. You made me feel uncomfortable for a whole semester, so I think it's not too much to think about the wrist bone. Although I haven't used it, I think I should take you try it out." After Lockhart finished speaking, the tip of the staff emitted a strange green light, reflecting Lockhart's distorted face and looking even more terrifying, drilling into the wrist bone. Lockhart roared the curse loudly at Hermione. Hermione closed her eyes in despair and waited for the pain to come, but a scream broke Hermione's despair. Hermione opened her eyes and saw Lockhart screaming constantly on the ground, and at this time Ron's wand had been broken into 2 pieces and Lockhart was still on the ground. Hermione looked at Lockhart who was screaming constantly on the ground, and finally felt unbearable, so after giving Lockhart a shot to faint, she picked up Ron's wand and went to find Ron who fainted. Just as Hermione helped Ron up, a large bright fire appeared in the hole opposite, and Seal rushed to the battlefield. Chapter 111 _ This is not your fight. When Seal arrived, he saw Lockhart, who was lying on the ground, unaware of his life and death, and Hermione, who was stubbornly supporting Ron, who was also ignorant of his life and death. This familiar scene truly startled Seal. Seal, who was thinking that Ron must not have an accident, hurried up and took Ron. Before Seal could speak, Hermione shook her head gently to indicate that everyone was fine. "It's a pity that our Char thinks wrong." Seeing Hermione shaking her head, Seal immediately turned pale, and there was only one thought in his mind: it's over, I'll never face the Weasley family in the future. He could only go up and help tremblingly. When Seal touched Ron's arm, he couldn't help but feel a little more regretful. If you hurry up, you can definitely save it. But after walking a few steps, Shatter noticed something was wrong, and the wrist he held here clearly had a strong pulse. So Seal took out a hand and waved, and let a fireball come close to him to see what was going on. The fireball, which was so immortal, just stopped at the back of Seal's head. So Ron, who was awakened by the toss of the two, turned his head and saw a humanoid creature with a ray of light behind his head. While supporting him, he tried to get closer and look at himself. Before Ron could react, his mouth steadied. Have I come to heaven? Hearing Ron's voice, Seal immediately realized that Ron should be fine, and let Ron sit on the ground as soon as he let go. The fireball behind his head moved to the top of his head and turned into a ring of fire. Then he looked at Ron angrily. Yes, you are in heaven, and there is a huge basilisk next to you. Ron was stunned when he saw Seal's actions, and then he and Hermione couldn't help laughing. After laughing for a long time, Hermione remembered and explained the situation to the two of them. When Charles heard that Lockhart was going to give Hermione a heart attack, he kicked the unconscious Lockhart, but what Charles didn't expect was that as soon as Lockhart was fresh, there was a scream like killing a pig. Seal, who was frightened by Lockhart's scream, immediately threw a stun spell, and the screaming Lockhart fell into a coma again. Seal looked at the two of them with some embarrassment. If I said, I definitely didn't work hard just now, would you believe it? Seeing that the two of them rolled their eyes in tacit understanding, Charles really had an idea at this time to wake Lockhart up again to prove his innocence. In the end, it was Hermione who interrupted Shire's unrealistic delusion. Go and help Harry. Ron and I will try to get Lockhart up, and the two of us won't be able to help Harry. After hesitating for a while, Seal summoned Lockhart's wand and handed it to Ron, and warned the two to keep Ron's wand. This was the most important evidence of Lockhart's crime, and the unforgivable curse was enough to make Lockhart's wand. Hart was given room and board for the rest of his life in Azkaban. After the explanation, Seal glanced at the huge snake slough next to him with some reluctance, then turned around and started running to a deeper place. Hermione also supported Ron with one hand, and used a wand with the other to control Lockhart, who was unconscious, to walk out. Of course, if Ron was really heavy, Hermione swore that according to their friendship, they would never go out again. Half of the time, I turned the bones on the ground into a pair of crutches and gave it to Ron to support himself. Well, it was definitely because Ron was too heavy. The words are divided into two parts. After the separation of Seal, Hermione and Ron, it is not so urgent to leave. On the one hand, he has to save his physical strength. If it weren't for the fact that he was really interested in Slytherin's secret room, and the inheritance of Slytherin should be here, what Seal wanted most at this moment was to turn around and accompany Hermione back to the warm lounge quietly. Of course, although not in such a hurry, Seal still walked to the door of the secret room. Seal, who was far away, saw the door that was no different from a bank vault. Bright fireball, and then prepared to sneak over to give that diary a big shot. As soon as he walked to the door, he heard the singing of the phoenix inside, and Seal felt a little sour in his heart. Loudang is a really good pet. It can fight, resist and milk. Seal expressed his desire for the 10,000th time. After being sour for a while, Seal just wanted to quietly climb through the gate and enter the village quietly, and don't want to shoot. Seal is ready to carry out this point deeply, and then he will kick the handsome Voldemort's face with starvation while taking advantage of the chaos. Just think about it. I don't know why, but Seal always thought that Voldemort would look weird if he had a nose, and kicking it would be the correct solution. Just as Seal quietly climbed through the gate while and was about to get up, he grabbed the back of Fate's neck with a big hand, and then Seal felt that he was covered by a cold liquid from head to toe. Frightened, Seal pulled out his wand and turned around to meet the third person who shouldn't be there, but when he turned around to see who it was, he was stunned. The person who appeared behind Seal was Slytherin's headmaster Snape. Seal stared blankly at Snape, whose face was expressionless and his head was even bigger because of the humidity. He asked in a low voice in surprise, "Why are you here?" Snape glanced blankly at Seal, who was in shock, and replied in a low voice, "Be quiet, they don't see us now. As for why I'm here, Dumbledore's request, watch Harry, it's that simple." After Seal heard Snape's words, he slowly put away his chin that almost fell to the ground, and replied involuntarily with a little embarrassment, "Teacher is really thoughtful." Snape glanced at Seal indifferently and did not speak. Seal also glanced at Snape helplessly, ready to get closer to the invisibility buff that Snape added to himself, to see if he could find a chance to give Voldemort a face. Foot. Just as he was about to act, Seal Fate was grabbed by Snape on the back of his neck. Snape, who took Seal back to his side with ease, glanced at Seal, and said in a flat tone, "Dumbledore just let me look at Harry." The implication is to tell Seal not to make trouble. This is Harry's lesson, and it's something he has to go through. Seal was a little embarrassed to hear Snape's words. After all, Snape wouldn't let himself shoot at such a good opportunity. Seal expressed a great deal of resentment for not being able to find a chance to kick Voldemort's nose. Snape looked at Seal, who was sitting on the ground sulking, shaking his head slightly, and said to Seal, "Believe me, no one wants to rush up to give Voldemort a death curse more than me." When Seal heard Snape's words, he looked at the paralyzed face next to him in surprise, and some didn't know what to say. Before Seal could reply, Snape continued, "But it's a pity, Seal, this is not you. The battle is not mine either." Chapter 112-Speak. Speak. Hearing Snape's words, Seal also calmed down, and the thought of kicking Voldemort's nose with all his might, even though the second-year Horcrux was definitely the most obvious time for Voldemort's nose. Limited edition. Seal sighed, and watched the play with peace of mind, as if it were an immersive movie. Seal thought for a while, took out his wand, and made 2 chairs on the ground with his own quietest voice. At this time, Snape unexpectedly fit in with Seal. The moment Seal began to cast the spell, Snape's illusory body charm followed, and the two of them cooperated to make 2 stone chairs quietly and silently, still invisible. Snape was not polite. After taking a look at Seal, the two sat down and watched Harry and the basilisk desperately trying. Seal even commented on it from time to time. Of popcorn. Of course, in the end, Harry pulled out the Gryffindor sword from the sorting hat, stabbed the basilisk to death, and destroyed Voldemort's diary with the basilisk's teeth. Seeing all this, Seal was so addicted, if Snape wasn't by his side, Seal would have jumped up happily and shouted, "Yi Ching Wei." The final result was still the same as the original book. Harry was taken out by Fawkes while holding Ginny and holding the diary. Seeing this, Seal couldn't help but kept laughing. Poor Harry, he had to endure the cold wind. It was clear that Fawkes could bring it back with a single fire of flames, but this phoenix flew with the two of them. If it wasn't for Fawkes's intentional killing of Seal, he wouldn't believe it. When Harry and the others were completely gone, Snape made sure that he couldn't see Harry. Then he stood up and waved his wand to release the invisibility, and said to Seal with a pretense of calm, "Never tell Harry all this. I hope you can let these things rot in your stomach." When Seal heard Snape's words, Seal curled his lips in disdain, not knowing who just stood up and sat down several times, stood up, sat down, and almost shot back and forth. Looking at old Sunere Snape, Seal waved his hand and replied perfunctorily, "Don't worry, I'm still a bit B-numbered, you don't need to talk about it." When Snape heard Seal's words, he always felt a burst of fire for some reason. He turned around fiercely and was about to start spraying venom at Seal, but he saw the horrified expression on Seal's face. Realizing that something was wrong, Snape turned around immediately and was stunned by the sight in front of him. I saw that the wound of the basilisk that Harry had just killed began to heal slowly, and the fangs that fell on the ground returned to the basilisk's mouth as if attracted by something, and even the eyes that were pecked by Fawkes were also gone. Slowly recover. After a while, the basilisk came back to life, and the huge snake-headed man stood up all of a sudden. The golden-yellow snake pupil looked at Harry's direction away, and slowly spit out a human sentence, 1,000 years, still not. At this time, Seal was already stunned. Anyone who saw the corpse that was killed in front of him resurrected would be surprised, let alone Snape. Snape at this time even felt his own the three views were shattered at this moment. At this time, the basilisk also found that there were two people staring at him on the ground. He lowered his head and looked over. The golden snake pupils looked at the two people who had not recovered. A Slytherin Dean. A. Inheritance. The basilisk said loudly after feeling it carefully. Before Seal could react to the fact that the basilisk could speak, Snape turned around to protect Seal, and closed his eyes tightly. Seeing the movements of the two, the basilisk slowly lowered its head and said slowly, "Don't be nervous, I won't hurt you." Hearing the basilisk's words, Seal, who was a little nervous under the protection of Snape, immediately asked the question he had always wanted to ask out of curiosity. "Then how do you explain the students who were attacked?" Hearing Seal's words, the basilisk twisted his body uncomfortably and replied slowly, "I'm sorry, I can't control myself. Snakes can never refuse the order of the Snake Whisperer. This is a very ancient contract, even if it is I can't refuse either." Hearing the basilisk's words, Snape was still nervous, but Seal obviously seemed to want to understand something, and jumped out of Snape's back all of a sudden, and said to the basilisk, "Explain." Seeing Seal's actions, the basilisk was obviously stunned for a moment, and then slowly started talking to the two of them. "I was left by Slytherin to protect Hogwarts from being occupied by Muggles. Once Muggles attacked the castle, I would be the last line of defense for the entire Hogwarts. I did it alone, but it all changed with a secret Slytherin return." The basilisk slowly began to tell his story to the two of them. "I was just an ordinary basilisk obeying the Snake Whisperer. Slytherin was already very old when he came back that time. I have never seen a body as old as him. He did a series of, and finally he transferred all his memories to me, and I began to understand what I was going to do from then on." Quote. Hearing the basilisk's words, neither Seal nor Snape were very nervous. The more daring Seal even secretly opened his eyes to look at the basilisk. The golden eyeball of the basilisk had a thin film, so that it blocked the evil eye of the basilisk. "Sounds like some kind of evil black magic." Charles was completely relaxed, pulling Snape back into his chair ready to listen to the basilisk story. Hearing Seal's words, the basilisk nodded, "But it's very evil black magic. After I got my memory, I learned that Slytherin was dying at that time. Wrote a mandatory contract magic, and I can only truly die if someone who is entitled to the inheritance defeats me." Hearing Snape say faintly, "Very powerful black magic should involve something about ancient magic." The basilisk heard his words and clicked the huge snake head. "Yes, I accepted the contract when I was unconscious, waiting for the emergence of the inheritance day after day, and I can't rest in peace for 1,000 years." The basilisk said that the huge tail slapped the ground fiercely, and Seal could even feel the anger of the basilisk. It wasn't until 50 years ago that a snake whisperer opened the door of Slytherin's secret room. "I was very happy that I could finally rest in peace, but this boy did not meet the conditions of the inheritor, so this despicable Slytherin, the descendants of me, relying on the talent of the snake whisperer to move forward and control me." Chapter 113 _ A story from 50 years ago. Under the narration of the basilisk, a history from 50 years ago unfolded in this way. 50 years ago, a young man named Tom Riddle opened the door to the secret room and disturbed me when I was sleeping. I was very surprised when he told me that I had been sleeping for more than 1,000 years. The basilisk looked at the two people with dull expressions and slowly told what it had experienced. Bewitched by his snake whisperer talent, I handed him some Slytherin magic. He's a genius and a quick learner, but I quickly noticed something wasn't right. Compared with Slytherin's orthodox inheritance magic, he seems to be more interested in the magic left by the dark wizards that Slytherin destroyed during his travels. Hey, don't look at me like that. This is Slytherin's memory, not me of. The basilisk looked at the strange eyes of the two and couldn't help interrupting the history they were telling. When Charles heard this, he looked at Snape helplessly. It seems that the ancestor of your academy is a little bit of a collector. He also collects these disgusting things. Snape was surprised by what Seal said, and glanced at Seal lightly. It was obvious that he also knew what kind of terrifying monster the Dark Wizard from 1,000 years ago represented. The basilisk didn't care about Seal's complaints, and simply complained and continued. He doesn't seem to be satisfied with Slytherin's collection and wants to get all of Slytherin's inheritance from me, but unfortunately, he was still young at that time and didn't awaken any talent at all, so he couldn't reach Slytherin. I'm left with the standard. So after the failure of the trial, he was very angry. He felt that Slytherin was not a real pure blood, so he used the talent of the Snake Whisperer to control me in an attempt to force the inheritance. But he failed. Slytherin's lifelong magical talent is by no means comparable to that of a young wizard. The consequence of forcibly trying to obtain talent is to be haunted by Slytherin's curse, and he will never awaken the slightest element in his life. The gift of magic. So he was so angry that he forcibly manipulated me with the intention of telling me to purify the Muggle children in the school. Fortunately, with the help of Slytherin, I can barely control the negative effects of the Snake Whisperer, but I can't completely go against the Snake Whisperer's will not to attack the child. So I chose some hints. I would not look directly into the eyes of the people being attacked, but would only find a way to let me see them indirectly. In this case, I would only petrify them, and would not kill them directly. I did this for only one purpose. When I was controlled to travel through the school's pipeline, I found a successor who met the requirements. I was controlled and could only remind him constantly, hoping that he could come to discover all this, and also can really put me at rest. But this person seems to be very stupid, and he didn't find the reminder I left from the beginning to the end, and finally things reached the point of no return. The basilisk said here, and Seal's face became more and more strange. If Seal guessed correctly, the stupid person in the mouth of the basilisk was Dumbledore. Dumbledore, who was the headmaster of Gryffindor at that time, should have touched the door of elemental magic, but he did not find any hint of the basilisk. Thinking of this, Seal really wanted to complain aloud. You should say it directly. Such a vague hint. If I hadn't read the original, I wouldn't have understood it. Snape's face was also very strange. Obviously, he also thought of who the stupid person was in the mouth of the basilisk, and it was hard to see Seal, who wanted to laugh but couldn't laugh. The basilisk didn't pay attention to the little movements of the two, turned around and glanced at the statue of Slytherin behind him, and then said, "That kid named Tom is really smart. He found my little mind, and also found the Snake Whisperer. It seems that he can't control me as perfectly as he controls ordinary snakes." So he relied on his powerful black magic talent to invent a kind of black magic, relying on Slytherin's curse and the magic circle of the secret room, and forcibly controlled me. Although he resisted desperately in my consciousness, he still used the took my talent to kill a girl. I was so grieved, the great pain made me break free from his grip, and I went back to the back room. He hasn't been around since he killed the girl, and seemed to know he'd get nothing from me. In the past 50 years, I have tried all kinds of ideas to end this boring and sinful inheritance of Slytherin, but unfortunately, every time I failed, I couldn't even sleep. Until a few months ago, a girl named Ginny entered the secret room. She also has the talent of a snake whisperer. I even thought it was the child of that person, but this little girl in first grade still used her rhetoric to make me believe her. There is no direct connection to Tom Riddle. Until I opened my heart to her again, and then the nightmare of 50 years ago came again. Angrily, the basilisk slapped the ground with its tail, causing a large splash of water. Seal looked at the basilisk opposite helplessly, and said in his heart, as a sturdy creature of black magic, "Cruel evil incarnation, is it really okay for you to be so innocent? Open your heart so easily." Seal felt that some of his thoughts couldn't keep up with the basilisk. That's the kind of feeling that I understand, but I don't fully understand. Seeing Seal's expression of eating shit, Snape sighed helplessly, sighed that he was still too young, and whispered to Seal, "Don't be surprised, the basilisk is 1,000 years old after all. A creature, and he hasn't been in contact with anyone in the past 1,000 years, so it's normal to be simple. Damn, you have to learn to think for yourself." Hearing Snape's words, Seal suddenly realized, and then turned around and glanced at Snape, who had no expression on his face. He was also a little muttered in his heart. It's not that I didn't think about it. The 3 views full of red flags are really out of place. Seal shook his head helplessly, looked at the basilisk who was still losing his temper, and said a little curiously, "Okay, Mr. Basilisk, I want to ask, what exactly is the trial you are talking about?" After all, even Voldemort, even though he didn't pass the test, Seal still felt a little bit of a drum in his heart. Hearing Seal's words, the basilisk immediately looked back at Seal, and even the whole snake was full of hope. "Yes. Trial. It's very simple. First of all, you must have talent. This is the basic condition. It is obvious that you are qualified. Secondly, you have to beat me upright. No black magic. No props. No potions. Finally, you'll enter Slytherin's grave and be tested by himself." After speaking, the basilisk looked at Seal excitedly. For no other reason, the torment of the 1,000 years is finally coming to an end. Chapter 114 _ This is my fight. Seeing the appearance of the basilisk, Seal was also eager to try, so he turned to look at Snape. "I try." Snape glanced at Seal angrily, and took a step back silently. "The meaning is obvious, you are free." Charles put away his rudeness, took out his wand and stood in front of him like a sword, showing a standard knightly salute. "Charles Lancaster, come to challenge Legacy of Slytherin." Seeing Seal's appearance, the basilisk was very happy, and immediately straightened his posture, bowing his head slightly to salute. "Quilliard accepts your challenge. Be careful, for the sake of the contract, I must do my best." Basilisk, no. Quilliard kept staring at Seal after he finished speaking, but Seal had closed his eyes when he raised his wand and decided to challenge. In Seal's perception, Quilliard did not move, as if waiting for Seal to act first. Of course, Seal is not polite. "Let's not talk about anything else. I want to give myself the full buff." So Seal started to wave his wand constantly, and the flames began to surround Seal's body. At the same time, fireballs and thorns continued to appear around Seal and began to circle around Seal. When Seal was buffed, the surprise in Quilliard's huge snake pupil continued to increase. He just knew that Seal was talented, but Seal was too young after all. It's almost enough to try to resist the contract a little bit. After all, it has lived alone for too long. But seeing Seal's actions, Quilliard couldn't help but start to face the young man in front of him. Not to mention Quilliard, even Snape, who was hiding and watching the play, was surprised. After all, he and Seal when laning, Seal is not so reckless when it comes to stacking buffs. Finally, Seal seemed to feel that it was a bit too much for him to stack buffs infinitely like this. He stopped, scratched the back of his head embarrassedly, and bowed slightly to the basilisk. "It's been a long time, Mr. Quilliard, thank you. Your weight. I think we can officially begin." The basilisk nodded slightly, said a word of attention, and then one leaned over and rushed towards Seal. Seal was startled when he saw the basilisk rushing over. While waving his wand, he quickly built stone walls on the path of the basilisk, slowing down the speed of the basilisk, and began to move quickly. Of course, the basilisk was not a vegetarian, and continued to pursue Seal by bypassing the stone wall. Just when the basilisk was about to bite Seal, a huge stone pillar suddenly rose from behind Seal, and the head of the basilisk with a big mouth hit the sky at once. Citation immediately turned around. Waving his wand constantly, the basilisk's huge body began to spew out one after another huge thorns. Some penetrated the basilisk's scales, and some grew huge. As if the earth unfolded its huge fangs and bit the basilisk on the ground at once. Especially under the basilisk's head, the stone pillar just now turned into extremely sharp thorns in an instant, and the small thorns were linked to the part where the basilisk was in contact with the ground. It is no exaggeration to say that if the basilisk cannot control stay under the body, you will definitely be stabbed in the opposite direction. It's a pity that the basilisk, whose upper body is often not beaten up according to Seal's wishes, let out a huge roar in the sky, and then Seal discovered that something was wrong. At the moment when the basilisk roared, the water element began to keep thinking about the basilisk gathering in the past. In Snape's eyes, the special effects were even full, and the water on the ground kept turning into small water droplets, and then violated the gravitational force. Constantly rushing towards the basilisk, it was like an upside-down rain. Seal was also stunned, watching the water elements continuously gather on the upper body of the basilisk, and finally slowly turned into a pair of wings composed of water elements behind the basilisk, so that the basilisk violated the laws of mechanics so straight stand there. At this time, the eyes of the basilisk have been completely covered by the water element, and the golden eyes can no longer be seen. Instead, they are replaced by bright silver composed of the water element. Under the blessing of the element, the original ugly and brutal appearance of the basilisk now appears. There was a hint of sacredness. The basilisk that completed the transformation let out a roar again, and the water element all over the body immediately formed a shock wave, and the ground thorns of Seal were washed away everywhere, and when it came to Seal, it was already a huge wave. Seal didn't have time to think about it. The wand slammed into the ground, urging the magic power in his body with all his strength, and began to pull out his wand at night. Pulling it up, Seal also stood on the stone giant's head with red eyes and kept roaring. When the giant wave set off by the basilisk hit the giant of Seal, the giant had just completed the upper body, and Seal felt the magic power of bottoming out, so he couldn't care less, and desperately urged the giant to lean on his double body. The arm stabilized his body, and after waiting for the huge wave to pass, Seal manipulated the giant and began to slowly climb towards the basilisk. Fortunately, the basilisk's tail was nailed to the ground by Seal, so no matter how high the upper body flew, the basilisk's tail was still on the ground after all. The giant also approached the basilisk with its huge arms, and immediately began to roar and scuffle with the basilisk. The blood composed of flames was continuously bitten by the basilisk from the giant's body and landed on the snake. The monster's body emitted bursts of barbecue aroma, and Seal was doing his best to maintain the stone giant. At this time, Snape had already used transfiguration to transform into a high platform, and quietly watched this great battle. In fact, in Snape's view, both sides were very strange, a basilisk who could use magic, and a high-ranking paraplegic. The stone giants are wrestling. Although the picture was weird, Snape had to admit that Seal chose to use this kind of large-scale magic to give the basilisk the most respectful failure. If he did it himself, the picture might not be as spectacular as it was at this time, but it was unavoidable. Will be filled with black magic. In the end, Seal still did not maintain the appearance of the giant stone. Under the impact of the basilisk, the stone giant of Seal was hit in the heart and immediately scattered, and the seal on the giant's head was also thrown away. Going out, he fell on the ground and rolled several times and didn't move. The basilisk didn't get much better either. The whole body was covered with holes burned by the hot blood of the giant shire stone. When it broke through the heart, it was thoroughly doused by the blood of the heart. In an instant, the basilisk also wailed and fell to the ground. Seeing this, Snape let out a slow sigh of relief, and just jumped off the high platform, preparing to take Seal to heal his wounds, but saw Seal stand up staggeringly. "Stay away, Professor Snape. I think this will be the last blow for the two of us." As soon as Seal's voice fell, the basilisk raised his head staggeringly, facing Seal's nosebleed. With multiple scratches on his body, the basilisk at this time looked extremely miserable. The body was burnt to pieces by the char, and bones even leaked in many places. The wings of water, which had been filled with a sense of sacredness, could no longer be maintained at this time, and could only be turned into a small stream of water to continuously heal his wounds. The basilisk's face was even more miserable. The entire face was burned by Seal. It looked full of evil and tragic. The original big killer, the snake pupil, had disappeared, and the eyes were tightly closed. Hearing Seal's words, the basilisk also replied weakly, "Yes, young professor, the last blow has come, you should stay away." Snape didn't understand the state of the two of them, and shouted loudly at one and the other, "Enough. You both need treatment. Now is not the time to be on top." Hearing Snape's words, Seal and the basilisk shook their heads in tacit understanding, and then said something that Snape couldn't refute. "This is my battle, a battle from beginning to end, a battle to end destiny. *2. Chapter 115_Fate ended. Hearing the words of this man and a snake, Snape was stunned for a moment, looked at both sides of the confrontation, shook his head, turned and left. Don't die if you leave a word. As Snape left, the door of the secret room slowly closed, and a smile finally appeared on Ciel's face. Keliar, this is my last blow, and the only elemental magic I invented. You are a worthy opponent. Let me end your tragic fate for thousands of years. When the basilisk heard Ciel's words, he didn't speak, but nodded lightly. For Ciel's choice, he would also respond with the strongest move, which is the most basic courtesy of a warrior to another warrior. After the basilisk responded to Ciel, Ciel started to wave the wand in his hand with a smile on his face, and in an instant, small red dots appeared densely and even connected together in the secret room. The basilisk gathered a place where all the water can be controlled and slowly converged on the forehead, and was aiming straight at Ciel, who was not afraid at all. When the little red dot appeared, the wand pointed at the snake opposite. The monster shouted out the name of his magic, Sparkfire. As Ciel's voice fell, the small red dots in the space began to explode one after another. Each small red dot was equivalent to a large kilogram C4 explosion, and the basilisk was at the most violent explosion. Area. At the beginning of the first explosion, the basilisk also shot out a small stream of silver water, and Ciel watched as the current hit him. It wasn't that Ciel didn't want to hide, but that Ciel couldn't dodge at all, and the spark ignited a prairie fire. The activation of Ciel required Ciel to only stand still, and even if Ciel could understand, Ciel, whose mana and spirit were overstretched at the moment, would not be able to move. Although the water column hit Ciel, Ciel did not feel any pain. Instead, a cool feeling enveloped Ciel. Then, like a basilisk, Ciel was engulfed by the explosion caused by his own magic. Ciel is also very helpless about this. The magic has not been perfected, and he can only do this. However, with his strong immunity to fire element, Ciel feels that he can resist the past with a high probability, so he resolutely launched it. Magic. But Ciel obviously forgot there was something called a shock wave. If it wasn't for that silver water element film protecting him, it is estimated that Ciel would have gone to see what the god of death in this world looked like at this time, like a diary. Looks like it. When Sha'ur woke up again, he always felt pain all over his body and shook his head vigorously, only to realize that he was still in the secret room, and the secret room had already been bombed. The flesh and blood of the basilisk has been blown away, and only a skeleton is left lying on the ground, indicating that there was once a huge monster guardian here. Ciel looked at the huge skeleton, and felt a little sad in his heart, and said softly, "Going well, Quayar." An old voice replied to Ciel, "Thank you for completing the contract of Keliar for me. I really didn't expect this contract to torture him for 1,000 years." Ciel was frightened by the sudden sound, turned his head to look, and found a figure composed of water elements standing beside him, looking old-fashioned. Seeing the figure, Ciel asked calmly, "Slytherin?" After speaking, he turned to look at the basilisk skeleton. The figure smiled and nodded, "Yes, don't worry, just like Helga, it's just a memory, and it will only be seen by the heirs of the talent with the elements." Ciel ignored Slytherin's words, still staring blankly at the skeleton of the basilisk Quelliar. Slytherin sighed softly when he saw Ciel's appearance. If the world exists, the elements are immortal, and the contract of element immortality will last forever. I didn't expect Quelliar to experience so much. In my plan, it may be at most 100 years before Quelliar will be liberated. Slytherin's tone was a little guilty. Ciel didn't react too much when he heard Slytherin's words. At this time, Ciel didn't know what emotion was in his heart, the joy of victory. The passing of an opponent. Legacy expectations. Ciel thought it was all, but it wasn't. In the end, all his emotions turned into a sigh. Yes, 1,000 years, too long. Slytherin also nodded slightly. Yeah, it's been too long. So long that my thoughts have finally become pure blood supremacy, and so long that wizards who were afraid of muggles have begun to despise muggles. Slytherin also sighed slightly, and then said, "Observing this world for 1,000 years, maybe the worst thing I have ever done is to be sorry for Quelliar and that fool who only wants to develop wizards." Hearing this, Seal shook his head, cleaned up his emotions, stopped looking at Quelliar's body, stood up with difficulty, and looked at the old man opposite. Quelliar said there was a second test. Seal said flatly. Hearing Ciel's words, Slytherin smiled and nodded. "Yes, there is a second test." After speaking, Slytherin spread his hands, and 2 books appeared in his hands. One was a thick magic book with a silver cover, revealing a noble and sacred feeling, and the other was a dark and obscure black magic book, like it is the abyss that constantly tempts others to look at it. "My lifelong inheritance of magic, my understanding of magic is here." After Slytherin finished speaking, he glanced at the silver-white magic book in his hand. "But to get it, you must swear that you will never bring disaster to the wizard. Darkness and dictatorship. Swear by your soul." Slytherin paused and raised the black magic book in the other hand and continued, "The Latitude Bible, this is a magic book I accidentally got. It can solve all your questions in the shortest time possible. Money, power, immortality, beauty, everything, as long as you want. He will tell you the quickest answer when you open it, but you can only watch it once in a lifetime. All right, let's choose." After speaking, Slytherin stopped talking and waited quietly for Seal to make a choice. Hearing Slytherin's words, Seal couldn't help laughing bitterly. "I think your hapless descendant Tom Riddle probably chose that black Bible. I really want to know how you felt at that time." Hearing Ciel's words, Slytherin also smiled helplessly. "It's too bad. I've been watching since he came into contact with Quelliar, and I even watched him defeat Quelliar with despicable ingenuity in the end. But when he chose the Latitude Bible, my heart really sucked, and I personally raised an enemy for the school I loved 1,000 years later." Hearing Slytherin's words, Seal also smiled bitterly. Who would have thought that the descendants of the hero would eventually become the devil? Looking at Slytherin, Seal said easily, "I choose the silver one." Hearing Ciel's choice, Slytherin finally laughed. The 2 magic books were burnt out by an unknown flame in an instant. Before Seal could react, Slytherin pointed his finger on Seal. On the forehead. Then Seal fainted. At the last moment when Seal closed his eyes, Seal vaguely saw a silver-white figure, followed by a small snake, and bowed deeply to him. "Thank you for ending 1,000 years of tragic fate." Chapter 116 _ the titled Char. When Shah woke up again, it was already midnight. Looking at the familiar ceiling of the school doctor's room, Shah was a little confused. "What happened? Why did you faint?" When he was in a daze, Seal remembered that he was suddenly dizzy by Slytherin. "Are you awake? Can you tell me what happened? You were already lying on the ground when Snape said he found you." Dumbledore's voice came from Charles's ear, and in the silence in the school hospital, Charles was startled all of a sudden. Turning to look at the kind old man sitting beside the bed, Seal sat up with a black face and began to complain. "Teacher, let me tell you the truth. Although you seem very kind, can you tell me the truth? When people just woke up, they made a sound to remind them. It would be scary if they didn't make a sound. Just now I almost thought it was some strange creature and sent an Avada." Listening to Ciel's chatter, although Dumbledore's expression did not change, the blue veins on his forehead betrayed the fact that Dumbledore still wanted to give Ciel an electric cannon. As an existence that often went crazy in front of various bosses, Ciel, seeing Dumbledore's appearance, immediately told Ciel that it was almost the end of his painful experience, and he would definitely be beaten when he came. The grinning Ciel immediately stopped his sharp complaints, and carefully took a sip of water from the water glass prepared by Dumbledore on the bedside table. Dumbledore still looked at Ciel with a smile, but this smile looks like, how do you say it? Do you know that there is a knife hidden in the smile? "So, what happened after Snape left?" Seeing the appearance of Old Dang, Ciel put down the water glass obediently, and then honestly told what happened. After Ciel finished telling the story, Ciel found that Dumbledore's white eyebrows were wrinkled together as if they were fighting. Charles suddenly had a bad feeling. "Teacher, what's wrong?" Ciel asked the old man who was frowning carefully. Dumbledore was not polite, and immediately explained the situation to Charles. Charles, to be honest, I can't feel any elemental aura in you now. Seeing Dumbledore's serious look, Seal said with a smile how it was possible, and opened his hands, ready to show Dumbledore the technique of throwing a big fireball. It's just an embarrassing situation. No matter how hard Seal tried, let alone the fireball, not even a small spark appeared. Seal was stunned for a moment. What about the big fireball that came and went away? This frightened Seal all of a sudden. If I really want to say, Seal is basically all about elemental magic, and the loss of elemental magic is directly equivalent to killing Ciel's half-life. Frightened, Seal jumped up from the bed, and immediately lifted the pillow and quilt to find his wand. After finding it next to the pillow, Seal just stood on the bed and started waving it constantly, but it was a pity, don't do it. Speaking of the fire element, even the earth element did not respond to Seal. The disappointed Seal sat on the bed in a daze, staring at the ceiling, not understanding what happened. At this time, Charles had a feeling that he had finally trained a tuba, but he had been hacked for no reason. Dumbledore couldn't help sighing when he saw Seal like this, and said to Seal, "Calm down, Seal, we haven't figured out what happened, maybe it's not a bad thing, calm down." Quote. Seal looked at Dumbledore blankly, but didn't speak. To be honest, Seal didn't know what to say, but Dumbledore didn't give up, and then said to Seal, "Don't give up, Seal, we need to find the root cause. The elements gather in the soul, merge with the soul, and the first thing you have to do is to see what is wrong with your soul." Quote. Hearing Dumbledore's words, Ciel's eyes were full of light again. Yes, it is impossible for elements to disappear for no reason. There must be some reason. So it seems that he is likely to retrieve his lost account. Thinking of this, Seal got excited. What should I do? Seal jumped up from the bed and looked at the old man across from him, as if he was impatient and needed to appeal immediately to get his account back. Dumbledore looked at Ciel's excitement and was speechless, but considering Ciel's mood, he could only continue in a whisper. "Calm down, Ciel, lie down, relax, and I'll guide you into your own soul." Hearing Dumbledore's words, Ciel immediately showed a wave of 3 seconds into the bed, lying down obediently and waiting for Dumbledore's action. Dumbledore was stunned by Ciel's actions. In Dumbledore's eyes, Ciel just lifted the quilt and then stabbed into it. The perfect posture lies inside. Shaking his head, he sighed with emotion for the young and really good Dumbledore. He took out his wand and placed it on Ciel's head. He kept saying to Ciel, "Relax, Ciel, follow the guidance of magic, relax, Ciel." Quote. Ciel just felt that his eyelids were getting heavier and heavier. After a while, Ciel closed his eyes completely. When Dumbledore's voice was no longer in Ciel's ears, Ciel suddenly woke up. At this time, Ciel was in a pure white space, with a calm mirror-like water beneath his feet. Every movement of Ciel would make waves on the ground, and Ciel stood abruptly on the water. In the middle of the white space, Ciel found a huge sphere completely wrapped in clouds. After Grindelwald's explanation, Ciel knew that this big sphere was his soul. "TMD, what's wrong with this look?" Ciel said suspiciously, then cautiously leaned up and looked around in a circle. "If I remember correctly, it was a big ball of dirt last time, and it was nothing more than the effect of the fire element. With mountains and valleys down, why did it become a big cloud ball this time?" Ciel looked left and right and didn't see anything. Suddenly, a bold idea appeared in Ciel's head. That's right, Ciel wanted to touch it. According to Ciel's theory, if you don't understand it, just poke it, and if it still doesn't respond when you rub it, then it's time to use the Soviet-style 45-degree angle to make a miracle repair method. As soon as this idea came out, Ciel couldn't control himself a little. He carefully stretched out his fingers and slowly poked the big ball. The moment Ciel touched the big cloud ball, a huge flow of information rushed into Ciel's head, and Ciel immediately understood what was going on. "Damn it, unlucky Slytherin, I'll help you end your fate, and you fucking call me." Chapter 117-Relegated Char. Ciel's scolding came over with a fresh look. When he understood what was going on just now, Ciel danced in his soul and scolded Slytherin for a long time. The reason is very simple. Slytherin did seal the elemental magic of seal, and now seal can only simply use the magic of wizards, but Slytherin also left a gift for seal. Slytherin left seal with the memory, or experience, of using magic in his life. These memories and experiences will not affect Seal's subjective judgment, but only allow Seal to have Slytherin when he uses magic. Experience of. To put it simply, Slytherin gave Seal countless experience and helped Seal wash his horn. When he did not complete the mountain in Dumbledore's theory, Seal could not use elemental magic. Unless Shah-Urwaz you can only complete the awakening of the 4 elements and enter the next stage of the element wizard. Of course, Slytherin is not so ruthless. He still left a lot of memories of magic knowledge to Seal, many of which are lost ancient magic, and a lot of miscellaneous knowledge, but Seal can't understand it all at once. You can only take it slowly. It is easy to become an idiot if you understand it all at once. This was explained by Slytherin in his memory. Even so, Seal still scolded him. Anyone who was originally full of special effects and now turned into 50-cent special effects would be cursed. After Seal woke up, he explained the situation to Dumbledore scoldingly. Dumbledore looked surprised and relieved. In fact, Dumbledore wanted to do this a long time ago, but Seal's elemental talent was too powerful. Brydor was not confident he could do it without hurting Seal. Seeing Seal lying on the hospital bed swearing and constantly highlighting the words starting with F, Dumbledore could only comfort Seal with a smile. Okay, Seal, it's not a bad thing. When you finish Slytherin after sorting out the knowledge, it will only make your elemental magic more stable. Not to mention, haven't you also completed the inheritance of the water element? Hearing this, Seal was stunned for a moment. He scolded so cheerfully just now that he forgot about the water element. Slytherin helped Seal complete the awakening of the water element. The one who touched the big cloud ball in Seal just now. In an instant, I knew that the ocean and the big river appeared on the big earth ball where the mountains and rivers ran wild. In addition to being lifeless, it is more and more like the earth under his feet. This is a very strange feeling. Obviously, he can't see it, but Seal can clearly feel it at the time. Looking at the dumbfounded Seal, Dumbledore stood up and patted Seal's head happily. Okay, even though I've been demoted, I should be happy. Maybe you're better at magic now than me. There's more. Hearing Dumbledore's words, Seal gave a wry smile. Don't be kidding me, teacher. The library is in my head, but I have to read it if I can't stand it. Hearing Seal's words, Dumbledore laughed happily. It doesn't matter, take your time. Next year, you will have a year to complete the awakening of the 4 elements, as well as the sorting of Slytherin's memory. Don't worry. Hearing Dumbledore's words, Seal was stunned for a moment, then immediately responded, No, teacher. Do you know what's going on next year? Dumbledore just walked to the door and heard what Seal said, and answered Seal with a smile. Isn't you the only one who predicted Magus? Rest in peace. Madame Pomfrey said that you will be discharged from the hospital early tomorrow. Oh, by the way, your 3 little friends are worried about you, especially your little girlfriend. After that, Dumbledore ignored Seal, who was flushed, and walked out of the school hospital. Seal lay blankly on the bed, always feeling that Dumbledore was going to do something huge, but the confused Seal didn't know what Dumbledore was going to do, so he shook his head and cleared his mind. Man is immersed in the vast knowledge Slytherin has left to himself. Early the next morning, Seal was discharged from the hospital again. What was different this time was that there was a little fluffy ball next to Seal, who was chatting with Seal about Harry's return. Shower also listened to Hermione's complaints with a smile and was worried. Although he had been shuffled, he felt that it was not bad to have such a day when someone cared about him. Just as Seal was tidying up with Hermione's help, at the gate of the school hospital, Hermione grabbed Seal and looked at Seal uncertainly. Charles, I don't know why, I always feels a little different about you. It's an amazing feeling that Harry said he didn't see you. What happened? Hearing Hermione's words, Seal knew that he couldn't escape. He sighed slightly, and told Hermione the cause and effect of what happened. Of course, the Snape part was omitted and replaced by Dumbledore. This must be replaced, otherwise Snape will know that he will definitely have no good fruit to eat next semester, especially the current CL's strength is seriously damaged. Let Snape hang up and fight. When Hermione learned that Seal couldn't use elemental magic for the time being, she was worried, and even dragged Seal to find Professor Dumbledore to see if there was a solution, but she heard that Seal got all of Slytherin's after the inheritance. He couldn't help but went up and hugged Seal happily. Looking at the little fluffy ball in front of him, Seal scratched his head a little embarrassedly, and made an oath that he would definitely study the magic left by Slytherin with Hermione in the future. Hermione was very happy after getting CL's promise. After all, she was so thirsty for knowledge. When she encountered some lost ancient magic, she couldn't help but want to learn, not to mention that this person was still Hermione's childhood Charles. Of course, their external caliber is very uniform. Seal is injured and needs a long time to recover. There is nothing wrong with this, even in the face of Harry and Ron, the two big mouths. When the two pushed open the door of the lounge, the cheers inside startled them, and Seal looked at the excited crowd with some doubts. It stands to reason that CL's existence in this matter should be caused by Dumbledore. Leto was wiped out, and even Harry and Ron just felt that they were lost, and there shouldn't be such a welcome pomp. But after watching for a while, Charles found that he was thinking too much. This kind of grand occasion is definitely not to welcome him. It is very simple. If he is really welcome, Fred and George will not hug and cry. Laughing, don't even know if it was Fred or George's guy who kissed Angelina, the girl didn't respond. After finding two exciting treasures in the chaotic crowd, Seal knew the whole story, but Hermione, who knew the reason, slapped her face. Chapter 118_End of Term. There was no pressure at the end of the semester, everyone relaxed, and even Seal was able to enjoy a normal student life. But even though Shire is relaxed, the fish in the lake are in trouble. After Harry exposed old Malfoy's conspiracy, Dumbledore publicly announced at a dinner party one day that the monster in the Chamber of Secrets had been solved by Harry, and the twins looked at their amulet business in Dumbledore's announcement. The synchronization is over. So the three people who were eager to make money got together and discussed it for a long time. They decided to start a new side business. They all said that making money from other people's things is the king of business. Shire felt that what he said was reasonable, so he slapped his head and came up with a stunt. When the three of them were free, they set up a small stall by the lake, started renting fishing rods, and started the fishing business. At the same time, Shire also set up a stall in the back to help the people who caught them to deal with the fish and let them fish. It turns into delicious grilled fish. The three of them made double money at once. At the beginning, this matter went well, but I don't know which unlucky Air Force guy who didn't catch a fish for a day went to Professor McGonagall to file a complaint. When Professor McGonagall came to the Black Lake aggressively and was about to find the twins and Seal to settle accounts, Seal looked at the extremely angry twins who were ready to accept their fate. Invited Professor McGonagall to taste the crispy grilled fish from China. The hot taste immediately conquered Professor McGonagall, and Professor McGonagall became a regular visitor. Of course, if you ignore that Shire took the initiative to fool Professor McGonagall, he gestured frantically to Gemini behind him and asked Gemini. It would be perfect if I went to get the hapless whistleblower. Shire's theory successfully conquered all the teachers in the classroom. After all, everyone has been nervous for a month, and fishing can also be relaxed, so many professors have begun to fall in love with fishing at the lake when they have nothing to do, relax their minds, and feel the beauty of nature. Try it. Of course, those who liked the Shire and Gemini business definitely didn't have the hapless Air Force and the hapless Lockhart, one of whom is now in the school hospital trying to shrink his fat tongue and the other being accepted at St. Mungo's treat. Seal also made a special understanding of the situation. He had to say that Lockhart was really unlucky. He used Ron's wand and used the 3 unforgivable spells. It should have been Lockhart of Azkaban. For some unknown reason, the spell was fixed on Lockhart by Ron's broken wand, so he could only be rescued at St. Mungo's. After hearing the news, Seal shuddered all over, thinking that Lockhart would be under the shroud of the torment curse as long as he was awake. In the end, Seal could only say that he could not live because of his own sin, which was more tragic than the amnesia in the original book. Too much. But it's not without benefits. Under the great pain, Lockhart answered all questions and had no intention of lying. This also led to the complete exposure of what he did to the Ministry of Magic. The Ministry of Magic even wanted to give Lockhart a Dementor's kiss, but according to the Daily Prophet, the Dementors disliked Lockhart's soul for being too mouthy and reluctant to eat it. When Seal saw this laughing waste in the newspaper, he couldn't straighten it up. Seal really didn't expect this. Who would have thought that the heart-piercing wrist bone would have this effect? Without the pressure of final exams, time passed quickly. When Seal was sitting at the end of the semester dinner, with the unhappy Hermione on the left and the silly Harry and Ron on the opposite, Seal even a little bit not so realistic. After all, the day of making money has just come, and it will end in a blink of an eye. Of course, if he hadn't touched the large dividends given by the twins before the dinner party, Seal would still have a feeling that all this was an illusion. Unsurprisingly, Gryffindor came first again this year, and the eccentric old dang was as firm as ever in this matter. After all, his disciples and the savior he cultivated were all in Gryffindor. Everyone at the dinner was very happy. Except for the little snakes of Slytherin, Malfoy and some Slytherins looked at Harry with murderous eyes. After all, it was Harry who killed his old dean in name. What's left, of course, is only a small part of it, and more of it is sadness for losing the Academy Cup. The dinner finally ended with laughter and laughter. Tomorrow everyone will embark on the train home to start a happy summer vacation. No one noticed that in the return line, Seal slipped away quietly, and even Hermione slipped away. All because I was immersed in the annoyance of not having an exam and didn't find it. After Seal left the team, he quietly came to Yao Jiniang's bathroom, stood at the entrance of the secret room and waved his wand gently, and the door of the secret room opened. After all, as the orthodox heir of Slytherin, this point permissions are still there. When Shah-Ur ran to the place where the snake slough was difficult, and wanted to put away the snake slough, but found that it had been taken away by someone who didn't know, Shah-Ur stood there angrily and scolded for a long time. After searching to no avail, he could only relying on Snape. After all, only he has the ability and the knowledge. Seeing the hopelessness of making money, Seal took a breath and continued to move forward. When he came to the door of Slytherin's secret room, he opened the door very easily, and he didn't need any parseltongue. Looking at the broken sculpture inside, it could even be said to be a piece of ruins, Seal was a little uncomfortable and waved his wand. With the help of the restoration, everything in the secret room was restored to its original state. Seal looked at the ground. The solitary skeleton of the basilisk could not bear to let him lie on the ground for a while. So under Seal's continuous efforts, Seal moved the corpse of the basilisk little by little back into Slytherin's mouth, where the basilisk slept, and used transfiguration to make the old-fashioned dragon bell appear to be showing claws and claws. The Slytherin statue became a little more affable. Just as Seal looked at everything he had finished with satisfaction, a big hand clapped on Seal's shoulder, which startled Seal. "Teacher, if you are so elusive again, you will scare people to death." Seal couldn't help complaining. Dumbledore didn't care about Seal's complaints. He just stood with Seal in the secret room and watched the secret room left by Slytherin. "How do you remember this?" "No joy. It's nothing, I'm just a little embarrassed to think that Kellyar is still lying on the ground." Seal replied lightly. Chapter 119 _ The Latitude Bible and Homecoming of the Intellectually Disabled. Hearing Seal's words, Dumbledore just nodded and didn't say much. According to what Seal said, if Quelliar hadn't waterproofed and protected Seal at the end, Seal's unfinished move would never have been completed. He will also blow himself up half to death. Simply instructing Seal to come to his office later, Dumbledore instantly twisted into a ball and disappeared into the secret room. Seal looked at the place where Dumbledore disappeared in surprise. "Didn't you say apparition is forbidden in school? Why doesn't this old man follow the rules?" Seal's black question mark expression had just finished vomiting when Dumbledore's voice remembered, "Headmaster still has a little privilege. Don't think I don't know what you're thinking, come to my office soon." Quote. Hearing what Dumbledore left behind, Seal was already stunned. Old Deng actually predicted my prediction. This wave of Old Deng belongs to the atmosphere. Looking at the empty secret room, Seal thought for a moment, waved his wand, and under the effect of transfiguration, a tall stone tablet began to slowly rise from the ground. The stele is 3 meters high, and on it, Seal chose to use some real snake shapes as carvings. When the stele was completely completed, Seal nodded with satisfaction at the inscription he left on the stele. This is the burial place of a person who stepped into the darkness with the light on his back and intends to protect the light, and it is also the burial place of a heartfelt partner who is in the dark but yearns for the light. Tribute to the great Salazar Slytherin and the basilisk Keliar who bears the fate of the millennium. After checking that there was no error, Seal cast a permanent magic on the stone tablet. This place should be regarded as the tomb of the two of them. The owner and pet who have been entangled for thousands of years are now here, one of their favorite schools. Rest in peace. Seal feels that this is also a good fate. Just as Seal was preparing to leave, a thick book suddenly appeared in the sky and smashed onto Seal's head. This time, the unsuspecting Seal stared at gold stars, and when the scolding Seal even wondered if his recent luck was a little too hard, Seal could not help but exclaimed when he saw the book on the ground. The reason is very simple. This is the Latitude Bible in the hands of Slytherin. Show up here. Seal carefully picked up the books that had fallen on the ground, feeling a little excited inside. Thinking of Slytherin's words, Seal finally couldn't bear the temptation of the book, cleared his throat, stood in front of Slytherin's tombstone, and formally asked what he wanted to ask. Latitude Bible, what do I do to realize my dream? Seal's voice just landed in the book and flew up. A golden light shone between the pages. He floated in front of Seal and began to flip continuously. After a while, the book stopped flipping, the light disappeared, and it opened like that. Suspended in front of Seal repeatedly, waiting for Seal to read. Shah cheered up, leaned in and took a closer look. He was instantly shivering with anger, and there was a sentence written in the book, and it was still in bold on TMD. Go home. Lie down. Charles tried his best to control his temper, and squeezed out a smile. Looking at the Latitude Bible floating in front of him, he asked carefully, well, Latitude Bible, you may not understand me. I mean, this is how you can lie down in abundance. If you are lying down in a normal way, do I need to ask you? Hearing Seal's words, it was obvious that the book was stunned for a moment. Yes, Seal also doubted his eyes, but this book was indeed stunned. Then after another violent flip and special effects, the book seemed to give the perfect answer, and Seal leaned forward to read it with anticipation. I saw that the operation procedures were densely written on it, what stocks to buy in the stock market, and when to sell them at what time, and when to sell. Shah was dizzy. Of course, the most important thing was that these operations actually took 15 minutes. 15 years of uninterrupted operation can make Charles the richest person in the world. However, the corners of Seal's angry mouth began to twitch when he saw this. If there was no magic, Seal might have really tried it, but now. Seal still thinks magic is more fun. Charles, who was so angry, closed the Latitude Bible at once. Charles didn't plan to read it. This thing seems to be a bit mentally retarded. I really don't know what Voldemort chose when he saw the text on it. Reaction. Seal placed the book in front of Slytherin's tombstone, bowed respectfully to the tombstone, turned around and left without reluctance, and did not forget to use magic to completely seal the secret room at the gate. Door. The story of the secret room is here, and you can rest in peace in the future, you too. Seal said slowly, groping for the basilisk's fangs in his pocket, looking at the completely closed door of the secret room. A few minutes later, Seal appeared in Dumbledore's office, and of course, if you ignore Seal's breathless appearance, everything still looks so beautiful. If you want to ask the reason, it is not easy, because after losing the sense of elements, Seal met Filch not long after he came out of the secret room. After successfully avoiding Filch with his excellent physical strength, Seal ran to Dumbledore's office. Dumbledore's beard began to tremble when he saw Seal's embarrassment. Seal retorted angrily that it was curfew time, which was normal, right? Dumbledore was stunned by the words to Seal. Charles, you're a wizard, the illusion spell is so simple, I believe that the knowledge that Mr. Slytherin has left for you will not be missing. Plus Mr. Slytherin's experience, I think it should be easy to get rid of Mr. Filch. After listening to Dumbledore's words, Seal's face turned red, and he ran so fast just now that he forgot that Filch was a squib. Come on, get down to business, what's the matter, teacher? Seal tried to change the subject by force. Seeing Seal's embarrassment, Dumbledore couldn't continue to make fun of Seal, so he took out a note and a letter from the table and handed it to Seal. Here's my old friend's address in France, visit him when you have time, and give him the letter. Your pet is also with him, and he will give it to you when the time comes. Hearing Dumbledore's words, Seal's eyes lit up. Mr. Newt. Seeing Dumbledore nodding, Seal let out a cheer, then left and returned to the dormitory, and began to look forward to the holiday trip to France. Pets and so on were second, the key was the possibility of knowing the plot of God 34,567, which made Seal incomparable. Pray. Of course, what Seal didn't notice was the playful look in Dumbledore's eyes. Chapter 120 _ Start of Summer Vacation. The next day, until Seal got on the train, Seal didn't forget what Dumbledore said before he left the headmaster's room. As for Newt, the protagonist of Fantastic Beasts and Where Are the Fantastic Beasts, and the autistic little Freckles, Seal was still very concerned. Looking forward to meeting. Of course, some things were automatically ignored by Seal. The reason was very simple. In fact, at the end of the first semester, Dumbledore understood Seal's unease when he saw the pear blossom and the rain. In fact, Seal is a person who was extremely insecure. He was born under the red flag in his last life and grew up in singing. Seal is well protected by some people who are mortals and gods, and he has not even killed a chicken. Until this life, Seal was not very adaptable. The reason is very simple, lack of sense of security, and it is not unreasonable for Seal to constantly experiment with dangerous goods when he was a child. After all, there is no such thing as a night market. Developed countries, you know. Seal actually understood what Lao Deng was worried about, but he couldn't tell old Deng Ming. After all, the phobia of lack of vitality was deeply engraved in every rabbit's DNA, even if Seal was a second-hand rabbit. Seal, who had put aside his distracting thoughts, happily listened to a few friends bragging on the train, and from time to time the twins would run over mysteriously to talk to Seal. Although Ron was very dissatisfied with his brother's secret communication with his friends behind his back, he was defeated when the twins said that this was a collision of geniuses, and that stupid Aududo was not qualified to participate. Although Ron was sick and didn't understand what Odudo was, he still understood who stupidity meant, and Ron sat there angrily, ignoring the twins. Of course, there is also Hermione who is not satisfied. Originally, the two of them were sitting together well, and the girl who was just in love would be very satisfied even if she simply sat together, but what she hated was the twins who ran over from time to time to squeeze her away. Seal is coping with all this with a smile. After all, for Seal, these little troubles and countless joys can be called youth, right? Of course, if I had to say that it was different from a year ago, it would probably be that there was another Ginny in the carriage with a blushing face, peeking at Harry from time to time, and not knowing what he was thinking. The way back was not boring. Seal felt that it was really good to have these friends sparring with each other. Of course, Seal invited him for lunch. After all, Seal made 2 windfalls this semester. If you count the 2 pieces of snake skin in the box that Snape asked for from Snape, and the fangs of the basilisk that he had collected before he left, then Seal really made a lot of money in this semester's class. Time slipped away quietly among the sadder happy appearances of a group of teenagers and girls. Soon the sun went down and the train arrived in London smoothly. After a group of people agreed that they must write letters to each other during the holidays, several people left the platform in batches. Seal, who was standing in the back, sighed softly. To tell the truth, Seal began to miss the smartphone, and writing letters or something was really inefficient. And the most important thing is that without a circle of friends, Shire's vacation travel can only be shown by photos at most. Is it really good to have no circle of friends at all? When Seal and Hermione walked out of the platform, they saw Granger and his wife standing in the crowd at a glance. Seal pulled Hermione over to say hello, and only then did he realize that his parents were very sad. She's on duty tonight, and Seal might be staying at Hermione's tonight. Hearing the news here, both of them blushed quietly, but they didn't say anything, just nodded silently and got into the car together with a tacit understanding. Where the two of them didn't pay attention, both the Grangers and their aunts looked at the young boy and girl with a smile on their faces, knocking on their children's CP, whether it was the Grangers or the Williams. All like it. On the way after that, both Shire and Hermione were a little embarrassed for not knowing the reason. The middle-aged couple in front of the CP knew about the situation after seeing the situation, so Mrs. Granger took the lead to break it. Embarrassed by the honey in the carriage. Hermione, are you ready for a trip to France? After hearing her mother's words, Hermione looked at her mother with a cute expression. What? France? Seeing Hermione's puzzled look and Shire stealing from the side, Mrs. Granger was also a little confused. Just taking advantage of the summer vacation, our family and the Charles family are planning to take you to France for vacation. Charles's mother should write to Charles and your principal, didn't Charles tell you? What? Hermione's voice rose 3 degrees immediately, looking at Seal next to her angrily. You didn't tell me. Seeing Hermione's puffed up look, Seal resisted the urge to poke Hermione's fleshy cheeks, tried his best to suppress a smile and said to Hermione, isn't this trying to surprise you? But Hermione said that she didn't want to talk to you, so Seal could only accompany her with a smile to comfort her constantly. Seal, who was coaxing Hermione wholeheartedly, didn't notice that the couple in the front row began to smile again. Just as Charles began to enjoy the peace brought by the summer vacation, on the other side, in the far east, an old man with a Russian beard was running away in embarrassment. Damn it, that old bee never said that Gringotts has such a reserve of combatants. While running and scolding, the agile figure does not look like an old man at all. Yes, this is the legendary first-generation Dark Lord Grindelwald. As for why the Dark Lord ran away in embarrassment, the reason is actually very simple. Grindelwald secretly came out. The fact that he escaped from prison must not be known by the Ministry of Magic of any country, otherwise it will definitely have the advantage of an international hunt. So naturally, many of his exclusive magics can no longer be used. After all, these magics are very representative, such as his famous gas stove magic, and even many powerful magic Grindelwald cannot be used, which also leads to Grindelwald was extremely aggrieved when he was doing something. Grindelwald, who was just taking advantage of the turmoil in the Far East to verify the feasibility of some plans, discovered that Gringotts in the UK seemed to be in the shadow of the turmoil. The goblin found him by some magic. So there is the famous scene of the first-generation Dark Lord hiding his identity and fleeing for his life. Of course, it is not only Grindelwald who is anxious for his life, but also Fawkes who is hovering in the sky. It is just here to send a letter and looks helplessly at the following in the famous scene. I was constantly scolding my partner for being unreliable. When will this unfortunate day end? Sighs resounded in Grindelwald and Fawkes at the same time.